Yeah,
at once.
we should.
Article 1 is to vote to elect officers for the town of Charlton on May, whatever.
Let's go.
And Article 2 is something, you know.
The Charlton Planning Board will come to order for April 4th, 2018. We have a couple bills to go over. We have one from W.B. Mason for $615.95, Staples for $116.99, and Leland Specialist Publication for $170. The invoices are here for that amount of money. Do I have a motion to accept the bills as read?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Again, tonight we have some public hearings. I'm gonna try to make sure that people don't keep repeating themselves, so we can keep them moving along. I really wanna try to get out here by 9:30. So we will move the public hearings along. We're not gonna get a lot of repetitious questions. Not being 7:10, we've gone through the bills. Bill, do you have anything you'd like to just?
Well, I'd like to order book. It's the Handbook of Massachusetts Land Use and Planning Law. We have a version that's from 1993, and it really is an excellent reference manual for zoning and planning law in Massachusetts. They have a 2017 edition. It's expensive. It's $430.99, but I think it'd be well worth to have around the office because we refer to this all the time. Keeps us current with case law and things of that sort.
And the
We
last
had
time
use the other
we
one.
printed it was what, 92?
Oh, well,
the last copy we
Yeah, the
got.
last
Yeah,
copy
we
we have
have it right over
93.
here.
93.
Yeah,
I think we got
pretty
another
dog
one
eared
out
at
of
this
that.
point.
Okay.
Is there a soft copy of it on the internet?
No,
It's all
no,
hard.
it's not.
They want your money.
And is there a way to buy like an update so that we buy the book, but then we also
Yeah.
pay extra for so that we get updated when they get updated?
They do have supplements that come out periodically, but
Perfect.
we never kept up with those, so,
Yeah.
we're
Time to buy
really
the
out
book.
of date, right?
Perfect.
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and purchase the book.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We had, Jane had the idea of contacting, yes, about, Big Cat for the mounting system that we talked
Yeah.
about.
Because
last
Great
they have,
idea.
they have the metal.
Right.
Yeah,
Right, so.
Great
So
idea.
will
See
you
where
and
that
I
is.
set up an appointment and have somebody come in?
Sure.
yeah.
We cover the
Perfect.
cost of materials and
Right.
let them do it
Absolutely,
as do
yes.
Kind of late in the season, so I don't know whether they can get it done in time or not, but.
We've gone this long without it, if we have to wait a little bit longer.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other thing I thought we could use is a shredder. We were looking around at all the paper we have in here. It'd be nice to start cleaning out some stuff that we don't need any longer.
Sure.
What's the
You don't
shredder worth at Staples and stuff like that? Would you buy
$100
something from
maybe.
shredded?
Couple hundred will get you a
Yeah.
real nice one,
Right.
like a
Yeah,
15
you
sheet.
get one.
If you got quite a bit, they may burn it out fairly quick.
Exactly.
But
Would
if
it
you
be-
get the heavy duty one, and I use the shredder a lot, and I've had mine for a couple of years.
Would it be worth doing a one-time like big shred where you pay them to come haul out a whole bunch of shredding, all secured, and then buying the shredder, but doing a one-time where they take bolts and bolts of things?
They'll
So
take the
that-
whole boxes.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Kurt has.
Correct.
So from time to time, the town hall collects a whole bunch of stuff. We have tons and tons of records that have a certain shelf life that we have to keep them for. And then we have a destruction schedule that goes with the Secretary of State's, and then we have one of those trucks come up and do that. So we haven't, it's probably almost been 2 years now. It's time for another go-round, so.
So
So
we
you
can
just
buy the
back up the
shredder and then,
boxes?
right, exactly.
Oh, yeah, they
They take the whole box and everything.
they give us the boxes back.
Oh, really?
Yes, if they're worth it. I mean, the banker's boxes we save and use again,
Oh, okay.
but, yeah, they dump it in totes and put it in the big machine, it sits out back
Nice.
and goes, and something comes out the end, I never see what it is.
That's okay.
Pulp.
Yeah,
So it would be worth getting the small one for now for usage.
correct.
And then through the next several months,
Pack everything.
Pack
purge,
everything.
pack everything up.
Agreed.
Or at least the newest stuff coming out would be
Exactly.
shredded.
Right.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to buy a shredder.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Just so you know, there's a balance of $1,688.48. in the planning board budget, so we have enough to cover these expenses and a little bit left over.
You took my next question out of my mouth.
So,
And that budget year starts in July.
Perfect.
We'll be all set.
if anybody wants to see what we've been spending money on, there's the updated list. There is an all boards meeting coming up, were you aware of that?
Yes.
Any idea when that's?
It's April 17th in the senior center at 6:30. So this is a good idea periodically for the boards to get together, coordinate activities and figure out what the other boards are doing and see if there's any way boards can work together. So those of you that are available, I think would be worthwhile to attend. If more than 2 are going to be available, Jane will post the meeting.
I know from the past we've participated in this meeting, and I know Alan has given us some paperwork to bring to the meeting, that maybe we wanted to see like kind of what the board has done in the last year, and what the board is anticipating to become before that.
Excellent.
So, April 17th comes fast between Bill and Jane. If there's some way you can make some notes for us, so that we know.
Yeah, just bullet point stuff.
I think enough of us will be going, so why don't we just.
We should post those, yes, absolutely, just to be on the safe side. May I ask a question as regarding these expenses? I noticed that Alan's Alan's mileage reimbursement is on here, but I noticed, Bill, that you don't have any. Is there a reason we're not paying you mileage?
Yes, because I'm not an employee,
Okay.
so I'm a consultant. So
Okay.
Oh, so you
gotcha.
privately would do it, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an oversight. Sorry.
thanks for asking.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
The other thing is, Peter, there's a EDC meeting that's been scheduled.
Yes.
There's a little question here on the date, so we'll have to get back to you because I think the intent was to have it on Monday,
I think it's Monday. 'Cause you've always
April
said
9th.
Monday.
Always Monday
So
at
I
but
think
one
it's
thirty.
posted for Tuesday, April 9th.
Oh,
So
I
we'll have
didn't even
to-
catch that, yes.
So we'll have to see whether it can be reposted in time
Absolutely.
for the Monday meeting. So I think it's been a while since the EDC has met. So it's a good idea to get back together and get up to date on what's been happening in development in town. And try to set up some sort of an agenda for the EDC for the next year as to what they want to try to accomplish.
Bill, do you think you would be available to go? if
Yeah,
the
I'm not
date was
usually in
correct?
on Monday, so I need to see if I can switch my schedule around. So I'll
Either
try to
that
do
or let
that.
me clarify if it's Monday or Tuesday.
Right, yeah.
It's Monday.
It is.
It's always Monday.
Okay.
So if Bill could make it, that'd be great. And then
Absolutely.
he can relay back to us
Mhm.
anything that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're close enough to 7:10. You want to send me the estimate?
No, it's not continued. Yeah. So, again,
What's that? Yes.
yeah.
Okay, we have a public hearing notice for the Charlton Planning Board in accordance with section 200-7.1 and 200-7.2 of the Charlton zoning bylaws. The Charlton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, March 21st, 2018 at 7:10 Charlton, Mass. On the application of Zero Point Development, 309 East Country Road, Rutland, Mass. 01453 for a site plan approval to construct a ground-mounted solar array to produce an estimated 2.0 megawatts of energy on property located at 107 Corbin Road. The property is owned by Daniel and Holly Stevens, 107 Corbin Road, Charlton, Mass. The area subject to the application contains approximately 128.5 acres and is situated on Assessor Map 57, Block A, lot 19. Said property is zoned agricultural. Copies of the site plan application are available for inspection at the planning board office and town clerk's office during regular business hours. Any person interested or wishes to be heard should appear at the time and place. What we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the public hearing. We'll let the applicant make their presentation. At that time, we'll ask comments from Bill, and we'll ask comments from Graves Engineering. Then the board will ask questions, and then we'll open it up to the public. And when we open it to the public, it'd be appreciated if you'd state your name and your address at the time, and try to keep the questions so that we're not repeating what other people are saying. This time, if the applicant would like to present their proposal.
Thank you.
Now you go.
Okay, thanks. Again, for the record, my name is Ernie Mello. I'm with 0 Point Development, the developer for the proposed array. I have Jay DuBois here from DC Engineering, DC Engineer, for the project. So I think, tonight is our first meeting here, our first presentation to the planning board for this project. So obviously, we're still working through some of the comments from the town's peer reviewer. I think it would just be helpful. I'll give an overview of the project, some of the existing conditions, the site plans, a little bit of detail on the site plans, and then we can, take any questions from there. Obviously, it's our first meeting. We haven't addressed every comment from Graves, so fully expect to continue tonight. But just to get into the plan, so I brought these two parcel maps, if you will, here. They worked pretty well for the last two projects that we did. One is kind of a little bit more zoomed out picture with rough topography and satellite wetlands here, showing the property in question. The other one's zoomed in here and is more like a Google Earth type picture of the property, to show a little bit more detail. And again, wetlands there is satellite. So on our site plans, we have the full instrument delineated wetland boundaries. But here is just going to show what satellite picks up in the system that we use to do like initial diligence on a project. So again, overview of the project. The property is 128 acre property. Gets its frontage on Colburn Road. So orientation, north is directly up. You have Colburn Road to the south, Partridge Hill to the east, and then Mugget Hill would be to the north up here, and Route 20 a little bit further to the north, just for orientation there. So 128 acres. The property's owned by Dan and Holly Stevens. They have their house on the property, single family house on the property, and the area that we're proposing to develop for the array is in this general area right around here. There's roughly 20 acres of clearing. The property right now, as far as existing conditions, is forested. So we would be proposing to clear roughly 20 acres. That includes the array area, anything inside the fence for the panels, and then shade buffer around to make sure that we're not placing panels in the shade from where we leave the tree line. So that's a total amount of clearing there. So the access road, Jay, if we want to just get an overview of the site plans here. Sure. And let me put this other one up as well. Okay, so access road is going to come in off Colburn Road. It's currently a pretty long dirt driveway. It needs some improvements to get the equipment and the machinery that we're planning to use back there. So we're going to improve the driveway, put down crushed stone as an access road. It's probably in the range of 16 to 18 feet wide driveway that's going to approach from Colburn Road north and up along the side. So there's a fence that will enclose the entire array. It's a 8-foot tall chain link fence that's mandatory from the National Electric Code for these types of projects. So the access road will enter into that fence and kind of wrap around the eastern side of the array. so we have access to get in, any type of maintenance that has to happen to the array, and it will come up to the equipment pad, which has the inverter and the rest of the electrical equipment that serves the project. As far as the interconnection, so where we're tying into the grid and where the electricity is going to be tied in, that is going to happen on Partridge Hill Road. So we need an interconnectable voltage and three-phase system to connect to. Colburn Road does not have that. Partridge Hill does have that. So that's why we are going out this way to Partridge Hill Road to interconnect the properties, the project. How we're doing that is accessing that street through a deeded right-of-way that the landowner has, through property that connects this back property here to Partridge Hill Road. We're planning to go underground with the electricity there, and there's actually an intermittent brook that runs from north-south down through these properties. So we actually are directional drilling underneath the wetland with the electricity, and coming back up, running underground all the way from Partridge Hill Road to the backland where it opens up here. We come up with a riser pole that has our equipment on it, and it goes back underground to the rest of the equipment pad and serves all the underground electricity that hooks up each panel and runs the strings together. So that's the interconnection. Normally, we do these projects, all of the equipment is overhead, but for this project, because we understand, this 20-foot right-of-way is pretty close to the abutting residences, we're planning to use pad-mounted equipment for National Grid. So rather than have overhead poles at the beginning here of Partridge Hill Road, it'll be a concrete equipment pad that's roughly 4 feet by 6 feet, and that'll have right on the ground the meter, switch, and recloser that are the pieces of equipment that are required by National Grid to monitor. They have to have access to that, and they'll monitor the production of the array and be able to turn it off if need be. So that's the interconnection aspect of it. Again, it is a 2 megawatt system, so roughly 8,000 panels in total. I guess that's, an overview there, Jay. I don't know if you have anything on the drainage. It's pretty standard type of.
Yeah, the site grade-wise, it's kind of meandering. It's not like any specific crown or any, it's not up on top of the hill. So the drainage kind of sheds off in different directions. We have a detention area kind of running along this whole eastern side to pick up this water. And there's a couple more basins down here, and also one more small one here. So that, the drainage will go in those directions. We do have some swales as well that's going to carry the water to them. The site's it's kind of a gravelly material out there, so we don't expect a whole lot of erosion problems or anything like that. I think Ernie kind of covered most of it.
One other thing, just as far as abutters, I know there's probably a number of people here interested to see what's going on and how close it is to the homes on Partridge Hill Road. Wish we had the house lots on there. Okay, so it's pretty light here to show. So Partridge Hill is right here, and this should be all to scale. It's shown very lightly, but you can see the road running down here and the residences for the different house lots off Partridge Hill. So it looks like the closest abutters are these two, where the houses are a little further set back off Partridge Hill Road. That distance from the back of the house to really the property lines between 350 and 400 feet right now. So that's the closest distance to the array. And these are probably closer to, I don't know, I'd say probably gotta be 500, 600 feet from the property line there.
And then the panel's probably another over 100 or 150 feet from the property line as well.
Our proposed tree line, obviously, is we've extended it as far as we can. I think we leave a 25-foot buffer between the property line to where we leave our proposed tree line. So we're cutting up to the property line, but again, there's significant space between where the houses are now to where the proposed tree line would be. I think there's some little bit of elevation change as well, but normally a distance like that is pretty minimal impact for a butter. So.
Alright, the applicant's made his presentation. If Craig should give us a little presentation also.
So our first review letter is back February 26th of this year. And as the applicant stated, they haven't yet gotten around to making revisions yet. We had a letter that had 36 comments. Again, most of those are, I would say, minor in nature, plan requirements, notes that need to be added, some stormwater and drainage comments. There are a few I'd like to just point out to the board. We can discuss further if you like. We did some test pits right before this letter was issued, and I think it revealed, if I recall, different soils and what the engineer had maybe modeled it designed for, so it requires a little redesign on that, which I'm sure we'll take care of, but just to point out. I don't know that basin locations and whatnot may change, but it's possible. So that's comment number 14. Moving to the end of the letter, the last two comments. 35, they talked about the easement where the electricity interconnection is being made. This is a bit of a different case here because it is an existing, I guess it's a right-of-way that runs through that property, abutting property out to Partridge Hill Road. And rather than go overhead, they were going underground in the pad line system as he described. So that pad sits right in someone's front yard, not far from the house and driveway. So the board may want to consider, what may be appropriate for screening and things like that at that location. So that's comment 35. 36 again is, as we've been seeing a lot of these that abut existing developed residential. They are proposing, by my measure, tree clearing 10 feet from the property line. Again, by my measurement off the plan, the nearest house is about 390 feet from that proposed tree line. The topo is a little bit changing. The site is higher than some of those houses by somewhat. We've seen a lot of these plans that have this similar situation. The engineers provided, we've all seen them by now. The section views, if you will, through some representative areas from the abutters properties to the array. So that helps evaluate, what the view could be and if additional screening could be necessary.
Bill, do you have any comments that were
Well, there was
coming
a zoning question that Kurt flagged. You have a copy of his letter in front of you, and the issue is that this is one lot. And you need to, for two principal uses, you need to either have them on separate lots that meet the zoning requirements or combine functionally equivalent to having two separate lots. In other words, enough frontage for two lots in enough area. So there's not enough frontage to qualify this for two principal uses. So we talked to Ernie today, and he's going to be working on some subdivision plan in order to subdivide this property in a way that would qualify for two lots, each use on its own lot. So I think before the board can approve that, the site plan, we need to have that zoning issue brought into compliance. But I think it's a matter of a technical compliance, and that's not difficult to really accomplish.
Is it the matter of just making one driveway going in and splitting it to two different lots?
Essentially, yes, but it needs to be a subdivision.
Yep.
In order to create a new lot. So he'll be filing a subdivision plan, which will be an actual subdivision plan, but will require waivers of different road standards. It's only really serving one house. So we'll wait for that submission, see what they're proposing to do and how they're gonna do it and what kind of waivers would be necessary. So, do you wanna comment further?
No, I think you, yeah.
Kurt, would the letter that Bill just read meet your, do you have any comments you'd like to add
Well,
on top of what Bill did?
I sat in on the meeting today. It's a technically correct creative solution. It does require approval of the planning board to create this subdivision and its own process. The other comment I made in that letter is that there is this deeded easement right-of-way thing. And I just caution the applicant, I did some cursory registry of deeds work, and I was not clear as who owned what and what it provided them to do. So, just a caution to the applicant that they should make sure that they are in compliance with whatever that allows them to do.
Yeah, just to be clear, and I appreciate you bringing it up, and so the right-of-way is deeded as just a right-of-way to the Stevenses. They also have recorded a recorded easement to National Grid that includes that right-of-way. So they have a recorded utility easement which allows rights through that right-of-way to pass utilities, trim trees if necessary, maintain utilities. It's recorded right in the Worcester Registry of Deeds. I actually brought a copy with me just in case, you know, to supply to the board
Thank you.
as well. So.
Who would be the two abutters on each side of the right-of-way?
I believe 78 Partridge Hill Road is Joe Bird, and I don't know to the north. He may be here, present.
78 is my house.
Okay. Is that, are you Michelle?
I'm Michelle.
Okay, yeah. So that's what you're asking.
Open up to the board at this time to ask some questions.
Will there be fencing around that cement pad for safety of both the equipment and any kids that might be playing in that area, et cetera, et cetera?
I don't believe that there is.
Can we make sure that there, is that something that we could ask them to do, just
We can
since
pr-
it is
we
in
can
someone's
pursue it.
yard?
We can pursue it. I don't know if there's standards as far as like
Okay.
access to it, but if there's the possibility to do it, it wouldn't be a problem.
Because I'm thinking perhaps maybe a lockbox, the fire department has access to, National Grid has access to, and that way, again, if there's kids playing in that yard, if there's animals, it just
Yep.
seems like a safer alternative
Sure.
to leaving it open.
And again, as somebody brought up with the screening, you know, we'd be more than happy to work with those two abutters as well to screen it and put plantings up if that's in the best interest.
I'll interject that you need to make sure you comply with National Grid's somewhat funky rules.
Right, and I don't know enough to say, you know, about those rules to say that we can and can't do.
Right.
But I will investigate it to see if it's an option.
Any other questions?
Have you ever done this type of installation with the underground?
Yes, we have done directional drilling before and underground trenching. So the directional drilling is just to avoid a wetland. We run and trench electrical for these jobs. You know, all the jobs, all the electrical for these panels all runs underground to combine the boxes and back underground to one area which has the equipment. We've run the access, what's called medium voltage electrical out to the interconnection spot underground as well. And we have directional drilled below and bored under wetlands before in the past as well. So this isn't our first go around with it.
So by going underground from the street to the site, it makes it more entertainable for abutters not seeing a power line
Sure.
and lines up in the air, it's going to be
Yep.
down on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the alternative is telephone poles and
Yeah.
overhead wires like you'd see on the side of the street.
Another question. When was the easement for the utility? Was that something just done recently, or has
No.
that always been?
I'd have to check the year it got recorded, but it's not something that we did when we started developing the project.
So
It's been there, yeah.
Is that something maybe Dan might be able to explain to us? When the easement may have been done, for what reason?
The easement was put in there when my grandfather bought the place. The exact date, I know, late 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
Typically, right-of-ways in Massachusetts, from what I know, and I'm not an attorney, but they come with the rights to access it, and pass and repass, and run utilities, and maintain utilities. So the additional National Grid actual easement deed that's recorded is kind of just, you know,
Okay.
benefit on top. Something that I think you need anyway if you wanted to run electricity, but.
What will be the condition of the easement after you're finished putting the line in?
I believe the easement that the Stevens family has is a perpetual easement.
I'm not worried with the surface, it can be grass
Oh, how,
or...
oh,
What with the surface?
yeah, it's grassed.
It'll be grassed over.
Yeah, sorry.
And so they can use that property, but they just can't put anything on it? What are the terms of that they will be subject to?
Yeah, so again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know exactly all the rights, but that easement, as far as we're concerned, is non-exclusive, meaning, you know, as long as they don't interfere with our use of using it, you know, dig down and interrupt the electrical connection, or do something that would interfere with our major use, it's not going to be of concern to us, and I'm sure the Stevens, you know, don't mind people walking on top of the grass.
So right.
Okay. It is owned by the landowner. You know, the land is actually owned by the property at 78 Partridge Hill Road.
Sometimes when it's real old, it's very vague, and when you try to do something, that all new regulations try to come into that.
That right of way was surveyed back in the early 70s when they broke up Mrs. Allen's place by Mr. Parrott. When he resurveyed my piece, he referred back to his notes that he had taken when he surveyed that out for Swayag, and that's how he put everything together.
Any other questions from the board members? Okay, at this time, we're gonna open it to the public. We'd appreciate your name and your address. And again, try to keep the questions different from the previous person, because we do have a couple more public hearings tonight. We just wanna make sure everybody gets their voice heard and continue to the next public hearing. Anybody in the public have any comments? The lady.
I'm actually the owner of 78 Partridge Hill Road, and I'm extremely, taken back that this is gonna be happening on my property. Did you guys do any type of testing back there at all, or were you back there with putting flags on trees and stuff?
Yeah, it was flags on it. Sorry.
Okay, so.
Could you state your name, please?
Michelle McAbee. I'm the owner of 78 Partridge Hill Road.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'm taken back because I was never notified. There were people on my property. There's still flags on trees in my backyard. I'm extremely shocked by, I came here because I thought it was just going to be in the woods in the back. I didn't realize it was going to be on my property on the side. I purchased my home in Charlton because of the land and because of how quiet it is. How long does a project like this take? As far as using the easement or the right of way or whatever?
So the access is where the traffic, the vehicular traffic will actually be. So the construction timelines for a project this size is probably between 3 and 5 months. But again, that access is going to come from a different area. There'll be some work in this right of way, running electrical, but I would say maybe a couple months of work in that area.
Okay, because I'm not having it. I'm not having people on my property making all this noise. I'm not having anything in my front yard. I can tell you that. You mentioned some 4 by 4 foot by 4 foot pad. That's not happening. I can tell you that right now. It's not happening. I literally bought this property, I just put an $80,000 addition on my home because I planned on staying here in Charlton, building a family, like, you know, and I'm not taking away from my front yard, you know, it's just not happening. And I'm very unhappy to hear that people will be doing work alongside my home when I literally work 14, 15-hour days. I'm exhausted, my husband works opposite shifts, like, it's not happening.
Ernie, could you show us where her property is, or the pictures with the house?
Yep. This is the house right here.
So it's that one right there.
What would you say the house is from the edge of the easement?
It's right next to our driveway.
It's probably about 100 feet, I would say, from the easement to the house.
So where our driveway is, it's literally from here to the window.
Yeah, the driveway comes in here.
Yeah.
It's probably 40 to 50 feet off the driveway.
And I know you're upset, and I understand, and just to clarify one thing about being in your front yard. So where we're proposing to put the ground-mounted equipment pad is not in front of your house by any means. It's in the area of your property that Dan Stevens has a right of way over, and he has rights to access and run utilities and put equipment on that right of way.
So when I purchased the home, I was told that it was for emergency access only. This is not emergency.
Okay.
And I want to build my home here in Charlton. I have a beautiful home that I built. Kurt actually was the one who came and with my house is beautiful now. And I'm literally boiling. I can't even believe I'm hearing this. And my husband will not be happy. I will not have people working next to my house like that. We have a calm, peaceful life.
Is he the one doing all the unauthorized hunting on my land?
No, we don't hunt.
Excuse me, that's
If I could just say one other thing too, so as the board, and as I tried to say as well, so I understand your concerns throughout the construction timeline, which is hopefully only a couple months long. After that, it's quiet. You know, there's no noise. This isn't going to be something that's ongoing for years and years and years. There's going to be a couple months where they dig out and go underground with the electricity. So when that's done, from here to here, there is nothing there. It's grassed, it's over, there's electric running under the ground, but basically if you went over there and looked at it, it'd be very similar to what you see right now. This equipment pad, obviously, will be there. And I'd be willing, I'm certainly willing to talk to you about hiding that, making sure that that's not an eyesore near your front yard, putting trees up around it to make sure that, from your house or from your driveway, you're not staring at this equipment pad that's on the ground. I'm more than willing to work with you on that. We could talk after the meeting about, what you'd like to see done. I know you'd like to.
3 to 5 months it's any amount of time.
That's back here. 3 to 5 months
Yeah.
is back here. This is much less work running this place.
This is really just digging a trench.
It's digging a trench. I'm being conservative because I don't want to tell you, a week and then it lasts longer. But this is the bulk of the work. This is, a short period of time, and then it's relatively quiet after that. So
How big is the equipment pad, just for?
4
by 6.
4 by 6. Yeah.
Is it going up by the road there, where the little square is?
Now, is there a transformer or is it just metering equipment?
It's just your standard, your switch, your meter, and your recloser. It's not the inverter. There's no transformer over there. That's all back here, farther away.
Question.
What's in the pad, Ernie?
There's a switch, like a manual switch, like almost like a circuit breaker. There's a meter that National Grid will use to view the generation and monitor the generation. And there's like a digital switch. It's called a recloser. It's like an automatic, not a manual switch, another way to isolate the system.
And how often would they come out and check the meter or do maintenance or that kind of thing?
I would say after the project's operational and it's turned on, it's maybe once a month. A truck driving and checking.
Question, if it's a 20-foot easement, most more than likely, the pad would be installed to one side of that 20-foot easement. Would it be installed in the middle of it, or?
I think we can move that to where we want.
So you gotta
Obviously,
factor in whatever National Grid regulations are for
Right.
fencing, blockage, whatever, so you gotta comply with that first before, I think you can really say how much you can hug it to the line. I kinda see what you're getting at, as far away from.
obviously, if there's opportunity to move it a little bit further away, we will. I don't know how much of a difference it will make. There's only 20 feet
Yeah.
to begin with, but
And the house on the other side, I know that they do have kids. I see kids there a lot. I have my nephew at my house all the time. They have a playground, like, literally same distance from that easement.
Okay, it's a 4-by-6-foot pad, concrete pad. Is there a structure?
it's about 10 inches off the ground. The pad, the structures, I don't know for sure. I would say probably got to be a couple feet off the ground.
Okay, so it's something like.
But I don't think it's gonna,
But
you
is
know.
there like things that people, because the
It's
National
almost
Grid
like a
has to open it
transformer
and like
box.
look at it, right? So,
Yeah.
so I mean,
So I would suggest that if you drove to a commercial site, you know, a bigger building, go right down the street here to 10 North Main Street. And between the exit driveway and the building, there's a big green box. That's their transformer, that's their primary transformer. And I think this might be a little wider.
It's gonna be a
Is it
trans, it's not,
encased
it's actually not a transformer.
It's
It's
all
smaller type of-
encased, there's no exposed electrical parts, it's a locked cabinet.
We could bring in some examples of these types of
as
things.
long as National Grid says it's okay, there could be some arborvitae on the side, so they're not looking at a big
Sure.
ugly box.
And it may, you know, if there's room there around the driveway, you know, with your permission, we would be willing to plant them on your property. You know, if we aren't allowed to plant them on the right of way because of the distance between the right of way and the, you know, electrical equipment, you know, with your permission, obviously, we would pay for it. But
So how do you propose making, like, what's the next step as far as making the path to drive in there? Or like, what's the plan?
There's
Like,
not gonna be any driving in there once the project is done.
but how are you gonna drive, like, how are you gonna get into,
down by the
like,
the
where the
existing-
project is happening?
The
It's gonna come
existing
off of his
driveway,
off
which is
Mulberry.
off
Okay.
Mulberry.
So
So
there's
that's
no
like all the-
vehicles going
Yeah,
on
there's
this
no
right
cars
away,
going
right?
up and down.
That's where like the delivery trucks, excavators, that stuff, that's all down here. That's all coming off of this road.
So where do you expect to park? Because Partridge Hill Road is like the tiny country bumpkin road. And there, like, where do you expect to park and do all your work?
We'll drive in on the access road and there'll be like a staging area and a place to store vehicles here. And we kind of work back towards where you're staging materials. Typically we start in the north and work south. So that'll all be on this parcel back here away.
And then, but what about doing the electrical under the ground? Like, where are you gonna have all that machinery and like, where are you know what I mean?
That's all gonna take place on the back, in the woods,
Mhm.
way behind your house. And then they would just run, once all the panels are done, I don't know the exact timeline, but, the panels are gonna go in, and they're gonna just run an electrical conduit, through the right of way to the street, and then they're not gonna be driving trucks back and forth through here, during the construction process. So that's all gonna be coming in Mulberry Road to work on the site. This isn't gonna be like a construction access during construction. So nobody's gonna be parking out in the street or anything like that.
But I'm gonna have people essentially in the woods in my backyard for a while to do that.
They'll be through here to do this
Mhm.
underground line.
Yeah, no.
So Jay, there'll be like a couple of days where there's a couple of vehicles that go through because they're gonna dig your
Yeah,
divot.
be an excavator.
And then, when that's all done, it's just kind of be covered and seeded and
Yeah.
you're at, so
Back to
that,
grass.
so it's gonna be a little uncomfortable for, probably a week and they'll clean it up and be out of there. By rights, they have the ability to do it, and they're trying to make it as pleasant as possible or as least invasive as possible, so you can work with them and get some arborvitae to make it look decent. It's happening, they're trying to make it the easiest for you. So you can work with them, they're always willing to meet with you, walk your property, see what they can do to make it easier for you. So I'd say it's gonna happen, so you might as well work and kind of have a happy medium.
As far as lots goes, I think some pictures of previous installations with great.
Yeah, like he just said, if you can show us some transformer paths, what you anticipate would be there.
Sure.
And then do some cosmetic drawings with arborvitae and stuff around it, if National Grid allows that close to their transformer paths. And then if there's the possibility of showing, with her permission, to put some shrubs on her property to block her view. And that's something, you can get together with homeowners.
Yeah, again, I can give you my business card, we can talk after the meetings, but more than happy to discuss those options.
At this time, do you have any other questions from the public?
I got a
Yes,
question.
state your name, the lady in the background.
No, that's all right.
My name is Tanya Mahan at 80 Partridge Hill Road. And what happened, because I came here in early March and saw the plan proposals, and the solar farm, I believe, was going to be about half that size, and I saw it going to the very corner of my property. But now it's extending all the way, it sounds like, to Michelle's property or beyond. So what checks and balances are there? Why is it doubled in size since I came and checked on it?
I'm actually not quite sure which plans you saw. This is our first presentation of this array, so maybe it was another, possibly, but I just don't know, so I can't tell you. This has been pretty much the design. It hasn't changed much internally when we've been moving through the design process, which is iterative. It does change. Slight small things change, like any project of this size, but this has been pretty much the proposal since we started.
Submitted in February, so.
I came in early March, and again, the 100-foot buffer was right here, and then here was the solar farm. I was told I would not see anything from my property. It's going to be directly behind my property according to this. So I don't know what I looked at here.
This is the one that was submitted in February, this is the same.
Everything is submitted was January 24th, so.
All right, any other comments from the public at this time? Danny, you had something?
I got a question. Dan Stevens, 107 Dublin Road. I'm not familiar with this subdivision deal where they say the driveway, there's not enough frontage.
You've got enough frontage for one lot.
Excuse me?
You have enough frontage for one lot.
I know, and that's the way it's gonna stay. That's what I don't understand.
Well, you
If
need-
I was shipping milk, I could run a milk truck out of there every day if I wanted to. I don't understand the difference.
Well, we've got two principal uses, so.
I know I'd have two principal uses if I was shipping milk too.
Well, that's an agricultural use, so that's different. But this is.
I've never heard that one.
Danny, I don't mean to interrupt you. I think that's a question maybe during the week you could come in and talk to Kurt
Okay.
and Bill about, because it's kind of a question you have about your rights.
Okay.
And, I think Bill and Kurt, one-on-one with you,
Okay, that's
could
fine.
explain it to you better.
If you want a copy of the original paper with that right away, I can produce one.
All right. So try to make an appointment next week.
Yeah.
Come in and talk to them.
Yeah, no problem.
And get it. One more question from the back, please. Yeah. Yes, the lady.
Sorry, trying to remember the beginning of your presentation. So you said there will be a 100-foot buffer of trees. And you count that on, or is this not correct either? Because this is what I heard
I'm
when
sorry.
I came here.
100-foot buffer, I don't recall if maybe I said that to state it. I'm not sure.
I don't know
Did
if
you
you
say
said
100
tonight,
feet
but
from the payload to the
Yes.
property line? I think?
Yeah,
Yes,
that might
it
be,
would be clear.
I think that might be from where the proposed tree line is to the closest panel. And that's buffer, but I wanna make it clear, that's cleared area, that's basically what you call a shade buffer. Those trees are taken down, so that the shade from that tree line does not catch negatively affect the panels and the generation. So there's about, depending on where your house is, there's between 600 and 390 feet of actual forest between the houses and where it opens up to the panels. But the buffer, the 100-foot buffer is just really the distance between the
I
tree lines.
misunderstood, I thought it was like more trees to help cover it additionally for people, that was my misunderstanding. When is this slated to happen?
So construction for this, this is our first meeting, so we're expecting a couple more meetings. We're also working with the Conservation Commission as well, so hopefully we get those things wrapped up in the next couple months. And then probably within a couple months from then, so probably maybe June, July, start of construction, if everything goes well and the town's bylaws don't change.
We have one question from the gentleman in the back.
Well, just a point of clarification. So from her property line to the nearest panel, what's the distance?
About 100 feet. From the rear property line.
From her property?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Everybody has some ideas tonight. The engineering firm has some homework to do.
Sure.
The next public hearing could possibly be May 2nd. That's the earliest we could book you in for. Do you think between that time you would be able to get before the conservation board and stuff?
Yeah, we're there tonight to start with them tonight.
Okay. Just that, we've had so many snowstorms and everything, we've been backlogged. As your public hearing was supposed to be a couple weeks ago, but because of snow, it was canceled. So what I'd like to do, if the board would like, is we continue this public hearing to May 2nd. And if for some reason...
Is that the next meeting, or is it just because the next meeting?
We're actually having a meeting almost every Wednesday of this month, just to try to catch up with the 3 meetings that we had to postpone. So, the earliest we can get you in would be May 2nd.
Okay, if that's our only option, obviously we'll take it. I mean, I would, we have been canceled a few times, which is why we're trying to move this along. So if there was any possibility to get on the next meeting and tag us on at the end, we would appreciate it, because we have been bumped to snow a couple times, so.
Right.
I guess if anything opens up as far as we get a cancellation.
Well, we
let
need
them
to
know.
announce it tonight, though.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
need to-
All right.
What if we started a half an hour earlier, just to get these things caught up? Maybe just this month, start a half an hour earlier at 3 meetings, so that we can get more on the agendas and get us caught back up to where we need to be. Well, we need to let them know if we're
Yeah,
gonna
because
put
we
them
gotta
on.
Yes, if we could get on sooner than the May
We
2nd.
can't tell you any sooner, so,
Okay.
but no, possibly we could.
Well, we have to post it.
We need to announce something when the
Yeah.
hearing will be continued too.
Yeah, May 2nd.
May 2nd.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to
Sorry about
continue
that.
this?
Sorry.
Continue the public hearing
You
to
guys
May
are busy.
2nd.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, not being 7:20, we have another public hearing. And this is a continue.
I didn't know about the warrant last fall.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna start the continued public hearing for the Brookfield Road Solar. As soon as everybody gets settled. All right, if the applicant would like to make a presentation, at that time we'll ask our engineer and our town planner, and then the board, and we'll open it up to the public hearing for the public, and we'll go from there. So if the applicant would please.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Attorney Todd Broder from Fletcher Tilton here on behalf of the applicant. Project team is Norman Hill from Land Planning, who's the civil engineer, and Luke Childs, who's the project manager for this particular project. We had a fairly robust conversation last time we were in. We needed to address the Graves Engineering peer review comments, and I'm sure in your file you have actually a couple of letters back and forth, one from our engineer and a few from Graves, kind of getting through those and working through those comments. I think I'll let Mike speak for whether he thinks we've satisfied them all, but I think, you know, overall they've been, we've weeded through those and got through that process. But I wanted to highlight a few things that we talked about last time and show you a few visuals that hopefully are helpful to you. The first one here, excuse me, the first one here, Norman's office put together to show essentially the areas of clearing on the site and to give you some idea of distances between, here's the fence, here's the edge of clearing, and the nearest residences. As you can tell, there's a significant amount of distance in between the edge of clearing and those residences, which is vegetated heavily. So we thought this was pretty helpful. Down this way, you see the Mass Pike. We talked about there's about 100-foot area in between the pike and our property line, most of which is also heavily vegetated. There's a little area in here that's a little less vegetated, but for the most part, it's got some pretty heavy vegetation there. And then you see the panels in the areas. This shows you the site closest to Brookfield Road, the portion of the site closest to Brookfield Road. As you see, the access road keeps on going, and there's another section of paneling down here. But really, we were giving you this visual to show you the distances from the nearest residential abutters. So that was one of the submissions that we sent in. The next is more of a profiling and try to give you an idea of where the panels are, where the existing vegetation is, where the houses are. So, sorry, trying to back out of your way best I can here. Appreciate it. But this is 3 Amber Road, and it shows a little funny. Obviously, we know the house doesn't look like this, but 3 Amber Road being here, the existing woodlands in the tree canopy is shown here. What this shows here in the darker portion is the plantings that we were suggesting, the arborvitaes, which can grow fairly tall. Then as you move into the site, you got the fence area in here, and then panels. And it's, there's a little bit of undulation to the site. Okay, and then you pick back up the vegetation, getting closer down to the Mass Pike, and the Mass Pike being down this way. So it's trying to give you an idea of what the folks in this house might be seeing. They're seeing existing vegetation this way, and to the extent that they've got any view down, got the arborvitae, the fencing. So that's the profiling that we provided to you. And then this is the shading analysis. And Luke, maybe you can give them a rundown of what the colors are showing us here.
So this is the proposed tree line along here. The red area is the area that we stay out of in terms of having adequate production. And then it's a little hard to see, but there's a yellow area which shows the extent of the shading during certain times of year. So this is really the no-go area. You can see we're even going in there a little bit, so it's impacting our production more than we'd like, but we don't want to trim any more trees.
Yeah, so the idea with this plan is to show you that you're not just going in there and clearing off areas of the site that don't need to be modified. These are areas that are cleared to obviously favorably impact the production of the panels. So those were really the 3 additional kind of pieces of the plan that we've submitted.
We also have the planning along in between, so you can see it on these 2 where the plans are.
Right. So in addition to addressing Graves' comments as we've gone through. We've got the planting plan on here, the shading, the profiling.
So the thing we did was took some sound measurements at the site. So we took decibel readings at 100 feet from the mast bike. That's 75 decibels there. And then we took them from Ashley Road. And they're recording at 55, right around 55 decibels currently, which is actually just the distance of reduction. There's no real impact from the trees without leaves on them to the sound. So it wouldn't be any more than it currently is during winter.
What day of the week did you do that? Just curious.
Middle of the day.
Middle of the day, middle of the week.
Good amount of traffic going through. And it's pretty pretty consistent. So if you're 100 feet away from the pike, it ranges between 75 and 72 decibels. And when you're on Ashley Road, it's between 50 and 55 decibels. If you have somebody drive along this road, that noise will increase on the road.
So we could go through the Graves letter, but I presume you'd rather not do that, and we can address those issues that you feel or Mike feels are outstanding, and we can address additional concerns or comments.
I'd like Mike to at least go through it quickly if there's something.
No problem.
Sorry, one more thing. Somebody had mentioned EMF from the site, electromagnetic frequency and radiation. So a 13.8 line will produce EMF up to 25 to 30 feet. That is impactful, and this is going to be significantly further to any residents. There is the high voltage line, which is not our line, which produces a lot more, and actually would be impactful to the front.
Mike, if you'd go through your report.
Yeah, just before I get into that, if I could just comment on something that was just said, I would just caution this board on any statements on sound readings that aren't done by a sound professional. As this board's well aware, we've been through this on other projects. Sound can vary with time of year, time of day, weather. There's a lot of different criteria, so anything that's stated, I just would take with a grain of salt if it's not by a professional. So since the last meeting, we've actually had 2 peer reviews. We're down to, I don't think there's any further engineering issues at this point. Those have all been addressed. They discussed the shading analysis, which supports their proposed development, obviously. And the final issue, I guess, the board could discuss is on the screening that's proposed. I had a comment that, excuse me, initially, what height would these arborvitaes be when they're planted? And at the time they're planted, they probably would not be a very effective screen, a continuous screen. It would take some time for them to grow and fill in the height and width would be uniform, wall of vegetation to a height that would screen it adequately. So there are ways to mitigate that too, by doing stagger rows to fill in the gaps in between the small and while the trees are maturing. So the board may wish to review that a bit further. As far as engineering issues are concerned, the drainage and the site plan requirements has all been taken care of at this point.
Bill, I'd like to pick your brain on
Yeah.
ideas.
Todd, could you go back to that profile? Yeah, I see you have it there. Can you sort of explain what that's telling us?
Sure. And I'll forget an additional comment, so if you beg my pardon for a minute. When Norman came in before, he had just been down at the Conservation Commission, and they did close that meeting and vote for the approval of the project as designed. Maybe I just went too quickly, but this is the home at 3 Amber Road.
Just so I can see a little better.
Yeah. This is the home at 3 Amber Road, and what these numbers here running down this column are elevation numbers. So you got 800, 810, 820, and so on. Down the bottom here, you've also got some indications of what the elevations would be. This area in here is showing you the existing vegetative buffer and the height of that canopy. And so if this is 820, they were going in 5-foot integrals there, so it comes up to, it's about just over 825 feet high. Norman, I presume this elevation is the second story, which is 823 feet. So the canopy is right about the same height as the second floor of the structures. The next row down and the next label you see is the row of arborvitae that's provided. So at their maximum, I mean, they get pretty tall, but at their maximum, they're around 20 feet. And that's shown in this area here. Of course, when planted, they wouldn't be that big. The fence is in here, and as you know from your previous projects, it's a 8-foot-high fence. So that's in this area here, showing exactly where that would be. Driveway's in this area, then the panels start here. So, you know, this, you crest up the hill a little bit and then down, fence on the other side. Again, the vegetation down towards the turnpike and then the turnpike down here. So the point is, this home here is looking into the canopy. And, you know, the vegetation that we're providing is lower level vegetation, which will help with any gaps, but that's really what it's showing. I think you have to take it and couple it with the other plan, which shows you the distances in between the array and the homes. It's significant buffering.
Okay, we've reviewed Greg's report, comments from Bill. We did have a letter, an email from an abutter, Laurie Degnan, and I'm reading, sorry. Too many pages. From Brian Blackwell. Is he present in the room?
Yeah, right here.
Hey, Brian, what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna give you a chance to speak, okay?
Sure.
And try to not repeat everything again, if you can, and just kind of make your points.
Summarize your
Yeah,
letter.
if you could summarize your letter.
Yeah, and so we can still try to.
In a presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so we will try to keep it brief and summarize a little bit, and then if I could at the back end of that, though, I do have some follow-up questions and some of the stuff we presented tonight.
Sure.
Because some of the questions I think they may have addressed, but I didn't really get some specific numbers that might help with that. So essentially, I want to point out quickly that we're not looking to say we're anti-solar or anti this farm use. What we're worried about is the Mass Pike. We're losing our entire buffer from the Mass Pike. We're losing our sound buffer. We're losing our pollution buffer. And that's what really bothers us the most. And the letter does address some water concerns as well, but it's not a huge concern. I think it's just cheap insurance to be able to say, let's do some water quality tests in case there's any kind of damage from the panels. There are studies that show it is possible, so we learned our lesson from Casella, from ExxonMobil. I think it's pretty cheap insurance to say, let's just safeguard ourselves against that. But as far as the, do you want to say in the beginning? Or? Yeah, go ahead.
So what we had done is, we went through the last meeting and we rewatched it a few times. I think some of this has been followed through here, but like Norman Hill had stated, we proposed planting bushes that will grow 6 feet tall. Once the bushes take, we won't be able to see the solar farm. We actually took a picture of our backyard from where our wall is up. That's a 30-foot grade up this hill. So we're 30 feet above where they would be putting in, that's figure 1. And that's the view. That's not a thick forest. I don't consider 5 skinny trees a thick forest as a buffer. Norman Hill also states homes sit back 200 to 300 feet, half is lawn and half is woods, 100-some feet of woods. We would like to say that it's not. Our house may sit back, but we use our backyard. There's not 100 feet of woods. There's 65 feet from where our grass ends to where the stone wall is. It's 65 feet of thin, small little trees. That's all that's there. It's not a thick forest as the Google Earth shows from the top. It's not, when you look through, it is not thick. It may be thick from the trees that are 100 feet in the air. It's not thick through. They are tiny, skinny trees, most of which are pine trees that have all the pines at the top, not at the bottom. Norman Hill stated, we're clearing right to the Mass Pike property line. Todd Broder said, there are pockets that are going to remain vegetated. As Norman mentioned, there are significant areas that remain vegetated. Norman Hill state, this is not dissimilar to the project that's up the road. The pockets of vegetation that they are keeping are where there's no houses. If they flip that over, there are no houses really close to the pockets of vegetation they are keeping. The pockets of vegetation they're removing are all from our backyard, or from behind us. And we'd also like to show in figure 3, we believe the one they're talking about is the one on J. Davis Road that abuts the Mass Pike. There are no houses north of that solar array within 500 feet. We're going to be right on top of that solar array. There are no houses that you cleared the woods from. Furthermore, that one is on a very high elevation, and those houses sit below a massive hill. We do not sit below a massive hill in this case. We sit above the hill. Todd Broder states, if someone came in with residential project, they could come in and do as much, if not more, clearing than we're talking about doing. A residential project would still have to abide by the wetlands. They wouldn't be able to clear in the wetlands. And a residential project would put houses as sound barriers, providing us a shielding from the Mass Pike noise and pollutants. Those would be our barriers, not the low-rising solar farm panels. Norman Hill also states, I work this site surveying it in the winter and I don't hear the pike. If you want, I can turn on the speaker I'm holding or play you video from my phone. We videotaped our backyard. You can clearly hear the Mass Pike in our backyard. So to say that he walked the site and couldn't hear it, we're showing that there is sound right in our backyard, right at our kids' swing set.
Can I just make one quick comment?
Sure.
I live on the other side of Route 20.
Yeah.
Way over by Bay Pat, past Bay Pat, by the middle school. I hear the Mass Pike at my house.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, so you can hear the pike, clearly.
Yeah. And I'm
you can't walk through those woods and say you can't hear the pike. But it's,
and I'm about 25 miles, 20 miles away.
right.
It's there. The noise is there.
Yes.
Right.
It's going to be there. Always will be.
So I wanted to quickly say, and I recognize the comment before, I think it was Mike that made it, about the sound studies and take it with a grain of salt. And I agree both with ours as well as with the Infinity's as well. But I think it's worth pointing out the fact that neither of these is official. We should have an official sound study with a peer review that's done on it. I'm not quite sure why we take readings from Ashley Road, as opposed, which is now further away from where you would take the actual property reading. So we did our own measurement, coming from our back property line, it's about 610 feet from the Mass Pike, and then parallel to Brookfield Road, the power line sit, and the trees are cleared out, 75 decibels, 710 feet away. So it was an increase of 12 decibels from winter in our backyard to a clearing where there's no trees at all. So in the summer, there's going to be foliage in there, so it's going to get quieter in our backyard if there's trees. So the difference in summer to cleared is going to be at least 12, probably greater than that. Every 10 decibels is twice as loud. So if we're looking at 15 decibel increase, that's 3 times as loud in our backyard. Again, not an official study, I recognize that, but that's why I think we should have a sound study that would show what the impact would be and why I think this mitigation should be put in place. Part of our research on this is that the Mass DEP actually has a regulation that covers any increase of 10 decibels or more requires mitigation for that. This is clearly above 10 decibels, just in again, a quick unofficial study. So I think a sound study should be done to say what mitigation is required.
Do we have any other comments from the public at this time?
I have a comment.
Guys, state your name and your address, please.
I am Sean O'Donnell. I'm at 1 Amber Road, and I'd like to make I'm right here. I'd like to make a comment about that previous slide, where that section, if you could say where that section is cut, I believe that is misleading. You could turn back, I don't know, turn your page.
Section's right to see that dash line.
Yeah, okay, so it's right there. If you could turn back one page. So, yes, thank you. So I want to make a comment about that section that he just commented on. That is the most extreme, and this is a photograph of last session's topo. The topography that they commented on was as they said, from 3 Amber to the Mass Pike. That was a section cut through the most extreme, highest point of the topo. You might say the highest hill to the most grade. Thing is, that is the highest, and it slopes down this way to, if I'm correct, if you want to look at it, slopes from the highest to the lowest in this way. So it slopes in this direction. And so also there will be a direct line of sight because they are proposing a grade regrading. There would be a direct line of sight from both of these houses going through this way and through this cleared forest area where they would put the solar panels to the Mass Pike, and therefore there would be no physical buffer that they are gesturing here because the slope comes down to here and then it even comes up again to the Mass Pike. And so I would say that a sound barrier would be appropriate because the land mass is not there in the majority of this sector on that side of the solar panel array area, and that a sound barrier would be appropriate, and of course a proposed wood privacy trees would be appropriate, and with that I would recommend the board to require to the company. So I have a document here that I can pass around. So in my written statement here, which I'm paraphrasing, I'm happy to leave it to the board to read, and my recommended motions for requiring the Energy Development Group, LLC. I recommend that a sound barrier wall get applied along this wall, along that property line, and privacy trees get applied. Now, in the page number 2 of that document, I also indicate that privacy, say, a certain responsible harboring of arborists of planting trees would be appropriate. Now, say, for instance, the examples of Spartan juniper trees installation of 4 feet on center as fully matured and growed at 14 feet would do the job, and as they grow together. Unresponsible and failing installations of privacy trees, say located on H. Putnam Road, right around the corner from here, has small trees, and they are vastly spread apart, providing no privacy at all, and shielding us from an unsightly neighbor, but also I just want to reiterate that a sound barrier wall would be appropriate too, because that would be a direct line of sight and a direct sound travel would come straight to us.
Mike? Any questions?
I think we need.
Do we have a date
I have extra copies if you wanted to pass.
Is there anything that we need to request them to do, or is the sound study appropriate? Warranted, or?
Not sure sound study is appropriate for this particular thing.
So we know it's loud.
We know it's loud. We know
So-
it's gonna get louder.
We know it's loud. It's just a matter of who puts up a fence. So we look at a 40-foot telephone fence with like that.
So the Mass Pike puts up those big wood fences to help the neighborhood, and Mass Pike's not going to do it now, so it's something that overwhelming thing to ask. Is it gonna kill, is it gonna be so expensive it's gonna kill the project, or?
My only thing is you have people that own the property, the noise is coming from their property.
Right.
They own the property.
Right.
They're not making the noise.
Yeah, but what they're
So-
doing is increasing the noise to the neighbors next door, so.
They're not making the noise though. If they were producing it, it's a different ballgame. And that's when we had, that was a project that we had, they were making noise, that's when we did apply that sound mitigation, sound study, that whole gamut. I just think you need to remember that.
Sound has been there.
Sure.
So the sound's always been there, but the site hasn't, so the tree raised up, like, I mean, we look at this and we can see the view, that kind of, but that's an easy fix with some high quality arborvitae and.
Well, that actually has an argument against putting up a sound fence, because based on the current state of the site, there are minimal trees up there now, so there's not a lot of sound barrier now. Clear cutting it by right would not then increase the noise so exponentially. I don't know that we would hit the 10 decibels. What do you think, Bill?
Those are our trees. They're clearing all the other ones. That's only our property right there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm saying like a nice thick of the high quality, not the ones that we often see.
Yes.
There's nice ones.
I think that should do the trick.
It'll talk
Correct.
the site, it'll take care of the site, and they can work together to get the heights they want and the heights they want, and maybe even on the abutter's property line, so kind of.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is, it's right now it's a minimal buffer between where they're clearing and the property line. Can we increase that? What was the distance now between the panels, or where you're cutting, where you're clear cutting and the property line?
Norman, do you have this?
200 to 300 feet.
No.
This
From our property line to the tree clearing, how much trees will
This
still
here's
be
about
from our
25
property
feet.
line to where
But you're clearing all that? Or
That's
are you
not
clearing
50
past the
feet.
road
No,
up
from the other
until
way.
10 feet?
We're leaving about 25 feet of trees
Of
here.
natural trees there.
And then.
On your side of the
On our side of the property.
Yep, and then you plan on planting another row.
And planting, and then we need the rows, the
Right.
area for, so there's no more room in there for leaving more
But
addition.
why
We
couldn't
leave
those
as much as we can.
panels come back further in line with what you have behind the wetlands? At least be consistent across
Be
that.
consistent with because we don't have wetlands behind us, we get no buffer. Everybody else in the neighborhood is lucky enough to have wetlands behind them, has a bigger buffer than our one house in the middle. Even Sean's house has some buffer behind it. We are the house smack dab in the middle that has no buffer like everybody else's house.
Could we require a larger buffer zone between the property line and?
Then you're decreasing the
And that's one thing we are asking for.
Because they already have it in place to do that.
I would rather see them plant some arborvitae.
Just gonna say that better trees, better
Better
buffers,
trees,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that.
It'll be shorter longer though.
Than shrinkage the solar farms. You know, like you say, just stagger them.
Yep.
So that they're growing.
But I'm not sure if there's enough room in there to stagger, is what they're saying. It sounds like there's just a
I mean,
minimal strip that
can
can
they
be.
walk the land and see if they can make it work? I mean, Mr. Blackwell has like the tree that he wants and how he wants them planted. Is that something that you guys can work with them to make?
We haven't seen the letter.
Yeah.
But,
Sorry.
We'd be happy to work with you guys and talk through it, and that's what we're gonna do really.
From what I saw, it looks similar. Do you have that picture?
You're fine, you're fine. No, that's.
In terms of what we were looking at, we're looking at doing arborvitae. We're looking at, I think we had 7 feet, and he was asking for 4 feet.
I was asking for 6 feet, but a different species though. The ones we're looking for go 30 to 50 feet at full height. They go 3 to 5 feet each year.
I was just talking about this one.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying there though is.
We can work on that, particularly, it looks like the area of concern is right in here.
Yeah.
So we can work on increasing that. We'll make that commitment, but I'm gonna suggest to you that part of the reason we're making the commitment is because we need to move on with the project. So we're hoping to close the hearing tonight and move forward. So, you know, we'll agree to work with the abutter and make this buffering here, you know, as significant as we can with varied species.
So the arborvitaes are a great visual barrier. They're not very thick and they're not going to provide much of a sun.
And some of the
But they're looking for sight.
no, we're
Sound.
looking for
Sound
sound.
is the big concern. Sound
So
and
the
pollution.
arborvitae will help with that too and be up all year in.
All right, what I'd like to do at this time is, I'd like the board just to be ourselves and go over requirements that we would expect this solar farm to do. See if the requirements meet what we would want to see, and then possibly close the public hearing. So I think what we need to do is review Gray's report quickly, not quickly, but review it, so that the applicant has an idea of what they're gonna be required to do. And then a few comments that came back tonight about different arborvitaes for that buffer, hopefully something to do with sound. And if we can all agree to something, maybe we can close this public hearing tonight.
I would like to say that I do agree with Sean in that the H. Putnam Road trees are awful, and we definitely want to do the opposite of whatever are over there.
Those Philippa, whatever they look pretty, look, ones in the picture.
Oh, the ones in the picture look fantastic, yes, I would agree.
So Mike, if we could just quickly hear comments from you as far as things you'd like to see them.
I think we've covered them all already. I only had two outstanding comments. One was the shading analysis, which they reviewed, which supports their proposed limits of clearing right now. And the second is the screening, which we've been discussing for the last.
And we've got feedback from the fire department as far as accessibility, stuff like that, the fire department doesn't have.
Kurt is here, you could answer that question.
Mike and I have talked about the grades in there, and as I've said before, the biggest level of concern is during construction, when there's workers there. After that, these are pretty stagnant operations, and the fire department's basic responsibility is because they're electrical energized equipment, we're going to contain it to the site. And so we have that access to do that.
So I have a question. So if it's not sight that's the issue, and it's noise that's the issue, according to this here, it's evergreens, which are shorter but better noise barriers. So are we looking more for sight? Because sight are arborvitaes, noise appears to be evergreens. What is the main concern?
The right plan would cover both, right?
Exactly,
So
right. So, and that's what we have in here is we have a number of things that try to mitigate that between, again, I think a sound barrier is appropriate for this situation because it is in violation with a proper sound study. I think the benefit of the site with the noise protection we have is that the trees will provide some sound. With taller trees towards a residence, and then smaller hedges in the front, which we have in there, to help block sound as well, which are going to get to a height that's going to block the solar panels. And we don't want to block solar panels, that's not the point.
Correct.
The point is to not get us 3 times as loud in our backyard.
Bill, in the past, Alan has always reviewed things like, this would be like a 2-year permit on conservation approval, things like that. Are we gonna request a demolition permit for this?
Absolutely.
Decommissioning,
We wanna
absolutely.
have
Okay.
So there'd be a demolition commission?
Yes.
Decommissioning.
Decommissioning?
Yeah.
bond? Any other things we should be considering tonight to make this proposal?
Landscape, Darren.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a standard list of conditions that will include in every decision, so that helps quite a bit.
We've been having, I think a lot of the arborvitae landscaping on all these projects.
Yes.
I'm not sure what exactly happened, but it seems like, I don't know if it's,
They're not doing it.
No.
so, invest well in the first time, so we're not asking you to do it 9 times.
Just a quick comment on that with the arborvitaes and where other site plans may have failed is that a lot of these require heavy watering in the first year to take root. So that's the one thing we'd hope to see is that the applicants would also take care of the watering for that first year to ensure they do take root. Otherwise, that's why you see these little twigs sticking up a lot of places.
Part of the conditions for the permit is that there's a 1-year landscaping guarantee that it grows after 1 year.
So we hold a bond on that, so if they
Sure.
don't take care of it.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to be asking everybody tonight with the conditions that we normally put on the commissioning, reviewing the landscaping on that one particular section, a little different shrubbery, and Gray's report. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion?
So how do you guarantee that, you know, just from this discussion, when we approve this plan, that the correct landscaping goes in and it suits everybody's purpose?
I'm sure they voted to let us know.
Yeah,
Well, that's just it.
Then Mike does periodic
I was gonna
inspections
say
as
yes.
well.
Yeah, Mike does too.
It's with the plan, it goes, you know, it goes along with the plan. It's the
Yeah, I'll
planning
write the
plan.
decision.
What they may,
It's, yeah, it's right
just
in
wanna
the
make sure that they
decision
do
in there,
something that
so,
makes
like, legally,
neighbors happy
legally,
and-
it's.
Alan used to walk the sites too, and he'd go check them out as well.
Right, we have. Do I have a motion to?
We closed it already.
Close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to approve the site plan as described to us? With conditions. All of them.
So moved.
Seconded? All those in favor? Aye. Or opposite, say. Okay, great, thank you. Thank you. They'll be working with you with the shrubs.
The sound is not, it's not been addressed. And we've already been in contact with Mass DEP, we want to continue with this, because this is a violation. Thank you, Brandon.
I will say from experience, just a little bit of tree cutting reduces that. And when and when they put the sewer line in, they clear cut. It's true, they're not causing you those, but they're. Which one's house? Okay, this is us. Yeah, that's true. This is the Brookfield.
Into my house, there was no, like, so it was, it's like waves, whoosh, 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 and you get so used to it. They put the light in, which was for safety purposes, fabulous, but then you've got the Jake brakes coming up, and motorcycles, and.
Sundays are much better than Fridays.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause nobody's moving.
Show your house
Exactly.
on Sunday. Show your house on Sunday.
Yes.
Trying to find those really can for that reason. I used to talk to them for a long time.
All right, being 8:30, we're running a little late behind here. We do have a
Wiggle the chairs too much.
continued public hearing for Osgood and Fitzgerald Road. If, Ross, could you just go up there and ask them to put the conversation down the hall?
If anybody's here for the Osgood Fitzgerald Road, we are planning, and if you guys want to go, just go ahead.
There you go, Alicia.
Thank you.
They're all referring for it.
Okay, well, fine.
All right. We're gonna continue the public hearing for Osgood and Fitzgerald Road. Again, we're gonna let the applicant, review what they've addressed. We'll go with Graves, Bill again. We'll ask the board, and at that time, we'll open it to the public again, get comments, and move on. Okay, applicant.
Okay,
What do you
thanks
got?
again. Ernie from 0 Point, Jay, in DC Engineering. We've seen this one, we've been here a couple times now. So for the sake of time here, I don't think it's necessary to go through the whole thing again. At the last meeting, we were probably 90% of the way through the Graves comments. There was a handful that we were rolling into our next revisions here. So Jay, do you wanna maybe just go through if there were any major pieces? I know we've got a letter back from, the town's peer reviewer that, I believe acknowledges all the comments at this point, so, Jay, if there's anything that stood out from, that the board should know.
I think the big thing to kind of point out one of the major things that we changed was we did look at all these individual properties as far as the drainage goes. We did analysis for existing and proposed, for all the residential property lines. And we did add another small basin here with 3 different outlet pipes with level spreaders on them. That was the only area that there was a slight increase still, so by adding that now, we have met, the existing condition runoff or less than what is existing at the back of all of these properties. I think that was the big question. So other than that, yeah, we've basically, I think we've taken care of all the comments.
Mike, if you go through your report. Sure. So again, since the last meeting, we've had 2 reviews on this project. The last letter being yesterday, the 3rd. So this review is based on an email that was sent to me with some sketches, so they have not been memorialized on a final set of plans yet. That will need to happen, as any project does, just to point that out. So the remaining comments I had about drainage and some of the details have been taken care of. I think the issue that, again, the board is going to want to look at on this project again is the screening from the westerly properties. They did provide a site section view at the last meeting, so we should probably, maybe they can go over it again to just get the board familiar with what they're proposing or not proposing in this case on that side. And review those 3 or 4 sections that they have.
This is that plan that Mike's talking about. So we showed a section at 26, 34, and 30 Fitzgerald Road. And you can see here at 26, here's the existing house, 240 feet to the nearest panel. And there is already existing trees in that area as well. And it's also about, from the ground level to the panel elevation is about 40 feet in elevation. That was the least one. You can see there's much more tree area on these 2, and also the elevation is greater as well. It's more like 60 feet, I believe, from the back of the house to the panels. This one's 310 feet to the panels. This one's 280 feet as well. So, there is quite a distance from the houses to the panels, and it does go up quite an incline from the back of the houses.
The first one was at 26 Oxford Road?
26.
Yeah, so
Fitzgerald, that's right.
north, south, and central, so if you're looking at, this one's up at the top here, the abutter to the top side of where the north end of the array would be, central about halfway down and south to the end.
And what was 30 Fitzgerald Road? Did you have one for 30?
30 was 308 feet from the back of the house to the panel.
And the last one was
34 was 280. So again, those are basically right through these areas here, through the middle, and then down in here.
okay. Perfect.
From the edge of the solar panels to the property line, is there any trees left on the solar farm? Or are you going right up to the property line?
Yeah, everything, this is the fence line that comes through here. So everything behind the fence is basically just gonna be, I don't know how you explain it, but it's not gonna be like clear cut and stumped. It's basically just gonna be.
Yeah, we typically cut the trees. We typically cut them flush unless the board or the commission asks us to top them. We won't top them unless, they ask us to do that, but we will not grub and stump out here. We'll leave it to keep the soil integrity and for erosion. So those are going to be cut. This is shade buffer. Those trees are going to be cleared. We typically, I don't recall what exactly we did on this design, whether it was 10 feet or 25 feet, but we typically leave a row of trees, 25 feet of trees between our property line and where we cut up to. So that will remain on this property, but everything else is pretty much cut.
Did you say that is the plan for this, or that you've done it before?
That is the plan for this,
Okay.
yep. I think it's 25 feet. I can't remember, Jay, if we did 10 or, I know Mike said looked like it was 10 on the previous design.
Is that marked somewhere on the plan?
Well, this is a 100 scale, I don't have a scale with me, but.
Yeah, it looks like about.
Yeah, it's probably 15 feet-ish.
20.
No, it's about 10 feet.
So there'd be 10 feet of vegetation left between the chain link fence and the property line.
Yes. And again, just from the property line to the panel is also another 20 feet in elevation. So this is 20 feet higher than the property line as well.
With a row of arborvitae's there to block that. If you go back to the other cross section. So there is some sight line to those panels from at least some of the houses.
We're in the hall, though, if you're in the house, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know that you'll really be able to see it from the house.
So what you're saying is from the house, they can't see that fence?
I mean, it's hard to say definitively, but I mean, I did drive down there and took a look
So
up, and it's.
if from the house, they can see the fence and they can see the panels? That's my only comment.
But the houses are lower than what the panels are, so you'd have to be looking up the hill.
Sure.
Be looking up.
But if you can see the fence, you can see the panels, and he just said that he doesn't know that you can't see the fence, so.
What is the distance that those three houses would hold as far as planting arborvitae's? What would that distance be?
Could be 800 to 900 feet.
That's a lot.
What's the distance from the house to the first panel, first row panel?
There's a lot of power being generated there too.
The house to the first, I mean, right here, we're talking 300 feet to the house. The closest one was down here, this was the one that was, yeah, about 220.
Mike has a comment.
Just for the board's information, so this is sort of similar to Carpenter Hill Solar Project, their first one. Along, and I think it's the westerly side of that project too, in Carpenter Hill Road's residences all above, and they planted a long row of arborvitae's along that whole row. And if I recall, I think they may have also added some privacy slats in the fence in areas too. So, I mean, there is precedence for that. The board has looked at it in the past in those situations.
Did you guys hear Mike's comment about possibly looking at what was done on Carpenter Hill?
Yeah, but
There was
privacy
some
slats.
privacy fencing put in, and then some arborvitae's. I think
On the abutters properties or on in
No.
front of the fence?
it's.
Part of the fence.
It's in front of the fence.
That wasn't a recommendation, I was just, I was just suggesting what other things, what it's been done in the past on similar
Yeah, I'm
projects.
trying to make these three people accommodate these three people with some type of,
Yeah.
do you feel there's a possibility of staggering some arborvitae's in there?
Yeah, I mean, we would like to avoid having to plant 800 feet of arborvitae's if we could. Something we've done in other towns, and just for consideration, is we put like a dollar amount to be used for plantings, and we can kind of do them strategically. I don't know about strategically in this area, scattered may not have the effect that
Sure,
we're
but
reaching
those houses
for.
look like they're a lot further, and there's probably a lot more wooding between them. I'm thinking mainly on the house that had.
Yeah, so I would have no problem maybe setting a number to spend on trees to work through bare spots
What if we did
and
something
walk
like-
the site.
What if we did something like Mike just said? Put some arborvitae's, some privacy fence, some arborvitae privacy fence, so that you wouldn't have 800 feet of arborvitae.
That's,
Kind of put them,
you know,
kind of put them where
we could
people
do that too.
would be sitting in their yard, kind of looking up.
Yeah.
Put some arborvitae, and then instead of way over there, nobody would see, make a little more of a privacy fence.
Yeah.
Just with the slats,
You
not,
guys,
with the
not
slats.
and
privacy
you
shelf.
guys would work with them to, you know, look at your, if you're standing in your backyard, what are you gonna see, and maybe that's where they should invest in.
Do we have a butters?
We have a butters, right?
But we are.
So would you work with them to look at from your backyard and see what you would see and work with them to maybe put a few?
Well, we're on the undeveloped property, which is right at that large catch basin. So what I'd like to know specifically is, what is it that's going to be in the back of our property? Is it going to be arborvitaes? Is it gonna be slats? Is it gonna be the fence? What's gonna be in that area? Because I hear you talking about the houses, but what's gonna be in that property north of those houses? There is a house to the north of us and houses to the south of us, but what's gonna be in the area of our property, which is right by that large catch basin?
Yeah, and that's what we're working to try to figure out right now, what the solution is to that. I mean, because there's nothing there right now, I think that is probably the least concern for us right now. We're trying to block it from people who are living there right now.
I understand, but it's a big concern for us.
I think maybe the best way to handle is maybe just do the privacy mesh around the fence on that side. Because I don't want to get into an issue where we block with trees for neighbor A, neighbor B, and neighbor C. The rest of the neighbors, you know, come out with pitchforks because we didn't put the trees behind their house. So the privacy fence mesh is a good option to use. It blocks your vision through the array.
Doesn't
You know,
have to
we
be
could,
watered.
you know, doesn't have to be watered. We can put it down this whole western. We can, you know, put it down this from here all the way around to cover any abutters on this side. I think that's a pretty fair compromise, given the grade, given the elevation change. It's gonna be pretty difficult to see, you know, through those trees on that elevation change anyway, so.
You like the idea of a privacy fence, maybe just stick 1 or 2 arborvitaes or not?
No. 1 or 2 is not.
Just
not
privacy
gonna do
fence.
anything with the privacy
Okay, we'll do the privacy fence.
Although I think if you look at that first house, there's very little, there's a lot of clearing between, and that's probably the lowest elevation that they have. It might be good if we could work with those people, and I don't know if they're here or not, but it just seems like that would be the worst part of it.
All right, Mike, what's it,
I would just try and have the applicant be as clear as possible what they're proposing, because there's lots of different ways you can screen chain link fence. Case in point, Snake Hill Road project that has a fabric on the fence,
Yes.
which is virtually see-through at any angle, so that doesn't accomplish any screening.
So what do you
So,
propose?
Well, honestly, my thought was to use that, but I'm willing to use the actual vinyl slats if the board feels that's a better option. You know, I have no preference there. We'll do whatever is recommended. Some people love the mesh, some people hate the mesh, some people love the vinyl, some people hate the vinyl.
Sure.
the vinyl?
So you can revise the plan to show the locations of the fences and the arborvitaes?
No,
I think if we could make it a condition of approval, we'll have,
Okay.
glad to add the
Fence all the way around.
the fence. I think it might make sense to do it from,
Well, there is a fence all the way around.
there's a fence all the way around. I don't know how much this is gonna benefit screening, there's no one back there. If we could just say where it would impact the butters, maybe from here to the southern corner there, makes sense.
I would agree with that.
Is it possible to have ivy or some other vine cover the fence as well? Would that grow up and create a screen?
I've never seen that done, so I can't speak to it, maybe.
Yeah.
Might be hard to get that length of an area to work.
Yeah, it might be difficult to just have it take out.
Have you ever seen it like any, maybe climbing?
We've discussed this quite a bit. What I'm gonna do is ask the public if there's any comments at this time. Could you just state your name and your address, please? The gentleman in the front, got a question?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Michael Zareski. I live on
28 Putnam Road, Charlton. And when solar came in, I was a big fan of it. And now when I drive around and see these solar panels destroying the looks of the countryside and the houses and everything else, because they don't have a fence up. Shepherd Hill is an eyesore. It's unbelievable. You know, just, you can't see the school. And that isn't what we want in this town. We want fences or hedges, you know, something that's gonna beautify the thing so it won't be an eyesore.
I think the board members have a concern also with the arborvitaes that have been planted. I'm speaking for myself that maybe a little better attention should have been paid to what type of arborvitaes we used. And I think you're gonna see other projects that do get approved by the board will have a better arborvitaes type shrub to block it from the road.
And I agree with you, Pete, because lesson learned on that.
Yeah.
With a project this big, I think the vinyl privacy fencing is the absolute best way to go because it won't die, it doesn't need water, it doesn't need upkeep, and you're guaranteed privacy. And then if someone, a landowner wants to plant a tree on the other side of that, then they can do so, but at least on the property owner themselves who is doing the project, I think a vinyl privacy fence is a guaranteed way to go.
So I'm hearing vinyl privacy fence, you're saying chain link fence with vinyl slats.
Slats,
That's what
absolutely
you're
correct.
which, okay.
Yes.
Want to make sure that's.
Absolutely.
Which is a standard, is that one of those?
Yeah, it's
standard?
used, it's been, we've used it before.
So I think the screening process is also a learning process for the planning board. And from seeing some projects that are 2 to 3 years old now, I think we could have maybe made a decision back then on the types of shrubs.
I think it should be mandatory.
And how it was done. And I think
We're
it's a
only
lesson.
defeating our own purpose in the future.
It's a lesson learned from us. And,
We weren't paying too much attention to the kind of species and how the
Didn't know we
whole
needed to.
process. We didn't, we assumed that it would be
planted in.
Well, I know the
Professionals were
first
taking care of it.
priority is the water drainage and everything
Yes.
else,
It's always the
and
one,
that's
we've always had the
wonderful,
one
but, that solar panel's gonna be there for years and years, so, our town property's gotta have some respect, you know.
But the nice thing too is, and we gotta keep moving, is when we do allow decommissioning bonds put on these projects so that if they do fall to the side, the town does have a right to decommission them and clean them up. That the money's been put aside for the town. One last question from the gentleman in the back there, if you would.
So just, wouldn't you say that there are some developers that have developed more sites in town, they've developed a track record. So you can now go back to those sites. If you're unhappy about sites, that the arborvitaes have died and the fencing has fallen down, if those same developers are coming to you and proposing new sites, maybe you need to question them a little bit more in depth.
That's a good point, and I'm not gonna dump it on Jane, but she could figure out who is still before us and who has been before us. Maybe there's something we can do and ask them to please go back and plant a few more shrubs, but I can't promise that.
Yep. Something to consider. Are you also taking other comments?
Well,
Yes.
it's got a late night. All right, one more, please. Yes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Lori Degnan, Osgood Road. Has this property been removed from 61A yet? I don't believe it has. If it hasn't, I would like you to hold off approval until it goes through the process of 61A in case we want to exercise our right of first refusal.
Yep.
We discussed that.
Okay. I just don't want you approving it tonight.
Okay.
Make a stipulation of approval
Conditions, right?
or.
Add it to the conditions.
Just add it to the condition.
We already talked about this, right? Well, adding it to the.
Did we add it for the site?
No.
Remember we discussed the Horn Homestead property with the 61A, and then we did that discussion about when to release it, to more or less to protect the property owner. At what point we do, so.
I think one of the conditions, if we were to vote on this, one of the conditions would be that it
Yes.
meets the 61A.
It can be a condition of approval.
61A. Okay. There was one other lady who had a comment.
What I wanted to say is, June Carey on the unimproved lot behind the large retaining basin there. So if you're talking now, this is the first time I thought that we were not gonna be having the arborvitaes, which is a natural, screening. That I'm just curious now, I understand that the catch basin, it's gonna be quite large, 25 foot across, if I'm correct on that. So behind the fence line, which now I see very clearly, and you mentioned tonight, up by that unimproved area, which is our parcel, are there going to be any trees in that buffer zone on the other side by that catch basin area? Is there going to be any trees there, or the solar panel's going to go right up behind that catch basin?
They're gonna go right up behind the catch basin, but I mean, it's about 100 or so feet.
Okay,
behind
and
the
right
property.
where your finger is, that slanted line, that's the fence line, am I correct? Like come down a little bit, right by the bottom of the catch basin?
Yeah, it's this, it comes up
That-
and goes around the catch basin. So this is all obviously on this property, all this proposed work and features are on this proposed property. And if you're asking, are there any trees on this property between the catch basin and the property lines? I think the answer to that is yes. We're leaving, I'd say, a row of trees, 10 feet of trees on this property, and then whatever's existing on
Right.
the lot that you own as well.
Right, and then the 25-foot buffer behind the end of our property is going, whatever trees are there will remain there,
Yeah,
correct?
everything that's on your property is,
And the 25-foot buffer behind our property?
No, it's a 10-foot.
Yeah, I think it's
10 feet.
10
Oh, so
feet.
it's 10 foot is the tree line.
10 feet tree line.
But the fence will have slats.
All right, any other questions from the board at this time? Do you feel that the conditions that we would apply, also checking the 61A, and with Mike's report, and we just discussed tonight the slats, do you feel we've discussed this enough that we could close the public hearing?
I do.
Okay, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Now, I'd like to have a motion made for, one, conditions that Bill would be writing up, which would include things like the decommissioning, 61A, parts of Mike's report that would be reviewed.
Final fence panels.
Pardon?
It's the final fence slats.
Yes, the slots for the privacy screen. Any other conditions you can think of that we should have added?
Just our regular standards.
All the
The regular
standard
standards.
ones.
All the standards.
Sure. All right, do I have a motion
As read. So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. All right. 9 o'clock.
You want me to let Green know?
Yes.
Yeah, we need. Oh, okay. Okay. Is that where you're from? I know. get into this.
You're telling me.
Well, and that's.
Oh, you want these? Okay, all right, sorry.
Oh, it's a full house up there.
Oh no, I brought my own because I know how dry it is. It's designated near the water plant.
Sure. But they don't feel that it fits the village district here. It's allowed in the zone.
This is a continued public hearing.
And this is the extent use that's like this project, it looks like sanitary, you can wear a green dress. And then so, oh no, the green dress doesn't actually match the rest of your outfit, so in this scenario, you let
Yeah. So where's that? Oh, no, actually.
Yeah.
All right, not being 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, gotta put a little spin on this. We're gonna continue the public hearing for Rain for Rent. What I'd like to do tonight is kind of change our format a little bit. I'd like to give the applicant a chance to address some of the concerns that we had last time. Try to keep it real short, but to the point. And we're gonna ask Mike and Bill for some comments, and then we're gonna let the board speak a little bit about some questions, and then we're gonna open it to the public. And at that time, hopefully nobody repeats what somebody just said earlier, and state your name and address. So at this time, if the applicant would like to start again, let's do it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Todd Broder from Fletcher Tilton here on behalf of the applicant. At the last meeting, you heard from my colleague Amanda Risch. Andy's here, the project engineer from Summit Engineering, Greg Prey, who's going to be the operations manager at this facility. What we thought we'd do is not going to go in excruciating detail through everything, as we're going to talk about. We'll hit some highlights of things that we have provided to you, minor modifications that we have made, and address some of the issues in Gray's and Mike's letter. So what you're looking at is a perspective or a visual of the front of the facility with a little bit of the signage on there. As you can see, kind of a nice reskinning, giving it a nice aesthetic feel from the road. Doesn't have quite that look today. So just wanted to give you that visual up front. The other item we have is a 3D rendering, and the purpose of this thing is to show you a little bit about how the site would be viewed really from the Route 20 area. So you get the reskin building out front, and the stockade fence that's going to run essentially that front portion of the property, and some nice trees that are subdivision standard distances apart, etc. just to give that a little bit of landscape feel. This area out here, I know you know, is kind of broken up pavement, not in very good condition. One of the other items to note is in this area here, you see this darker shaded area, and that's an area that Andy spent some time on kind of building up a little bit, so it ends up having some height to it, so that the screening that's allowed and the fencing that's there actually provides even a few feet taller as far as the blockage, because that's a 2 foot or so knee wall there. So raising that up, putting the fence on kind of on top of that provides you a nice size for screening in that area. You had some questions, and Mike had some questions about the storage areas for the tanks. And before I show you that plan, well, I'll flip to it. But in talking to Greg about the number of tanks, and I think some folks might have been a little scared hearing, maybe 80, 90 tanks. We've shown on the plan 88 tanks, and this is kind of max capacity. This is everything is sitting on the yard at the same time. That is a pretty rare circumstance. The tanks are often out on jobs, for extended periods of time, and so you're rarely going to see 88 tanks sitting in the yard. But what you can see is 54 tanks in this back storage area here. Another 14 set of tanks there, 10 and 10 up there in the kind of launch areas. So that's where the bulk of them will be in this back area, and these areas are also appropriate for storage, and these are the kind of daily outbound ready yards that I think was described to you in the last meeting. So 88 tanks, that's max capacity. That is kind of worst case scenario. So really, the stockade fence, the storage, we showed you the visual. Andy might have a few more details for you, but those were kind of the main things we wanted to highlight for you tonight.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Again, my name's Andy Baum from Summit Engineering, and Todd said on the high spots. But if you look up here on the north end of the page,
excuse me, could you just turn a little bit for people to see where you're pointing to?
The board?
The other way, please. Yeah, so you got it.
So, based on our previous hearing, there's a lot of concern about the ability to screen some of the operations here from view on Trolley Crossing Road. So, just like last time, we have a proposed stockade fence along the front, but we've added some greenscape here, street trees, essentially. I followed the subdivision regulations, having a tree every 50 feet, deciduous tree. And then ancillary, although then the exact locations aren't specified, but if you were to go along Putnam Hill Road, or Putnam Road South, excuse me, there's a couple blank spots that could have some fill-in with some white pine. Try to keep this area dense as it exists today. Another important thing to note, there is, if any of you remember from the front of the building, and even from this rendering here, you'll see that just a flat or shallow pitched roof along the front. If you were to go out there today, you'll actually see a steep pitched roof coming this way. And that steep pitched roof was an add-on at some point in time. And it's not, I don't know the exact terms of what's going on with that part of the structure, but it's going to be removed. It's not sound enough for the improvements they're looking to do. So that portion of the structure is actually going to be removed as part of this work. So right along here on the east side of the building, and then the north side of the inventory or warehouse storage building we removed as part of this project. And subsequently, either the concrete will be left if it's found to be in good condition and pitched the proper way, or be repaved. The adjustment to that in the parking calculations, you have a loss of storage or warehouse area or other use in the parking table. And then there's actually a reduction in the office space also as proposed. So the look on the bottom, you'll see that the tables reflect that change of square footage. And again, like Todd indicated, I think there was a little surprise at how much tank storage could be in, but we went and took a stab at trying to see what would fit in here for tanks. People show that you're not going to have tanks everywhere. It's a pretty fairly organized way to store the tanks as needed. Another important thing to note if you were to drive up Trolley Crossing Road here, you'll see that the road actually starts to climb slightly. You may not even notice it if you're in your vehicle. So in order to keep the stockade fence as effective as possible, if you look on sheet 4 of your set on the upper middle detail, construction detail, in the plan set, it's not going to be in the cover letter. So there's a couple cross sections labeled AA and section BB. And the intent of that is just to show that we're proposing some grading change with a knee wall or a block, set of block to elevate that area and then get the full effect of the 6-foot high stockade fence. So instead of being a lonely fence on top of a block, it's actually going to be graded out and then managed. So you'll drive along the road and have something that looks pretty flat with the existing road or sidewalk, and then get the effect of that fence rather than have the opportunity to look over it as you're going up in elevation. Those are the major revisions that we've done. There was a laundry list of other items that I believe we've addressed in the secondary plan set.
Yeah, so I think that's probably good, and we can kind of field the questions as we go. The only other thing I'd mention is, you know, as you know, we're here for site plan review on this by right use in the district, and we realize it's not the use that maybe some would like it to be, but it's an allowed use in the zone. You know, we're trying to make reasonable improvements to the property. I think the facade and the stockade fence and the landscaping out front are indicative of that commitment. So we just ask you to consider that.
I know there's a lot of people here tonight that's got a lot of questions, and I know the board members have some questions that may be the right time to say it and may not be the right time to say it. But what I'd kind of like to do at this time is just ask Mike if there was any part of Gray's report that we could discuss tonight, so that and then we could ask the board to open up their questions.
Okay. So on this project, since the last meeting, we've had 2 reviews, so we're on review number 3 now, which is the April 2nd letter. I guess I'll just touch on some of the more important details that the board may want to look at. Some of the things that were asked at the last meeting, some things that are new comments based on the changes to the plan. So, comment number 12 was about the lighting, and the board had asked last time for them to look at addressing the existing lighting, which is to remain. The plans do indicate that they're going to install house side shields, which will help with some of the spillage. I believe the board did ask them to look at LED fixtures, so that they have not committed to that yet. It's not on the plan. So that's number 12. 13 is about the stockade fence and what's proposed there with the tree plantings and loam and seed. The fence material that they're proposing, the stockade fence, the plans don't specify what the material or the color is. The rendering shows a colored fence, but the plan should be specific what type of fence it is and if it's, what material it is and what color, if that's applicable. And I just pointed out that the 6-foot height of the fence that's proposed may be insufficient to fully screen some of the materials that they're proposing to store in there. For example, these tanks, and this is right from Rain4Rent's website, you can look at it if you like. Those tanks, when they're sitting on the ground, are 9.8 feet tall. So if you're looking at on a street level view, a 6-foot fence may or may not screen, the top of those tanks in front of it. Also, just something the board should be aware of. Let's see, let's get to 23. So these are some responses to Mr. Meskis' letter from February. The plans do now show, this is regarding the amount of outdoor storage on the lot. The plans do indicate that 13% of the lot is proposed for outdoor storage, which is less than 50% that the bylaw caps, but it's unclear on where those exactly are, what they're counting in that 13% or 75,000 square feet. And so I suggested maybe a graphical representation could be helpful so that we can see what they're including in that calculation. That's part B. Part C, they are proposing some white pines, 4 white pines to be specific, along the Putnam Road property to infill, I guess, some thin areas in the vegetation on that side. The plans don't specify the size, the caliber, the height of those trees at the time of planting. That should be specific. We talked about the number of tanks, so number 25. The board had asked for that last time. The engineer sort of addressed my comment. I had a question, since now there's some building demo that's proposed, which wasn't proposed before. What the treatment of that surface under that building would be, if it needs to be paved. You mentioned the slab may be able to be retained and just use that, so I think the plans should be specific on that. I guess the final question was on in the back area where the double row of tanks are being stored. There's an area, it's a light green between the brown and the gray, that's proposed to be cleared. There's brush and light vegetation there now. I question what the surfacing of that would be, because it seems to me, and I don't know how exactly they ferry these tanks around, but I assume that if you picked up by a truck and driven out, it seems to me you would need that room for a truck to be able to get in there and pick them out and dry them out. So once they clear that vegetation, is that going to be gravel? Is it going to be paved? I think that needs to be addressed on the plan as well.
Bill, other than some letters that may have come in during the week, do you have any comments you'd like to
I
advise
just
the
had
board?
one question. In the tank storage area, will those be striped spaces so that there's a dedicated space for each tank, or will they just be sort of thrown in as packed as closely together as possible?
They'll just be put in, there's not gonna be any stripes to show where they'll go.
So how do you keep it organized then, so that they're not just sort of strewn around in a haphazard fashion?
I mean, generally what we do is we park them parallel within a foot of each other. So when we start the row, we just put them in. We don't really have any need to put any stripes on.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how you control the number that can go into a location. You've got it designated on the plan, but how do we know that you don't have 60 in the 54 space area, something like that?
Right now, I mean, the 88 that we show, right now the most we've had backed in our yard is about 60. Between our yard that's down on Route 56 in Huntoon and our current yard, it's been about 60. So.
Bill, do you have car dealerships in town that have inventory that they park someplace?
Sure, yeah.
Do they treat it a certain way?
No, when you get a used car lot, it's 50 cars, 25 cars, the used car lot.
Limited to a certain number of cars, right?
Right,
But
there's no
I guess I was
storage
just wondering if
offsite.
there was a local example of an inventory area that we could model off
A
of.
used car lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually.
I'm just thinking, trying to keep it organized so that they park where they're supposed to, yes.
Yeah.
At the first meeting, there was concern about the turning radius coming into the property. You talked about possibly changing something or altering something so that you could come down the bay for those 4 bay garage doors. Did you change that at all?
I think I must have missed that, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
If the concern was getting in here, you gotta remember, again, this is a 40 scale drawing. If you're, the distance from parking stall to parking stall is about 80 feet, I'm sorry, 40 feet.
No,
so even
it was up further, you were thinking
up in
about,
here?
yes, where that green was. You were
Yeah,
thinking about rearranging that.
They were gonna take the shrubbery out that's in the island by the mailbox.
Yeah, that hasn't changed, if that was,
Yeah, that's what I was.
I'm sorry, so there was a concern where, I know practically from being there, there's a concern of sight distance. When you approach or exit from this way, you can't see left well, and when you exit from this way, you can't see right well. There's a very high juniper, probably well intended at the time, located behind these mailboxes, and it really obscures your vision across, and that was the purpose of removing those, to make it, safer for everybody. You have a daycare across the street where you got a lot of parents that quite frankly aren't paying attention, coming in and out of here, and you've got other people just traversing the road. the curve slows a lot of people down, but you still can't see.
I know there's a FedEx box there.
Mhm.
Yep.
Is there also a mailbox there?
Yes, there's a
Yes.
set of mailboxes.
Okay.
Yep, there's a FedEx box in the US Postal Service box.
The postal service box will remain.
There's no-
Is that for the?
It's in the right of way, there's really, this site plan isn't addressing the addition or removal.
It's
of
staying
any-
because it's for the road, right, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, other people get their mail there.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a big,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Any other questions? All right. I'm gonna open it up to the board at this time for a couple questions. I know not all our answers are gonna be heard correctly tonight, but let's try something.
Okay,
Who'd like to be first on the board?
I'll take it. I just have one question, this goes back to the very, very beginning. Community business, which is what this is zoned, and it abuts up against village district. In my mind, community business is something that the community would, individuals in the communities would patronize. And like a bank, like another bank.
Bakery.
Like the daycare, and this
Medical facility.
medical facility, right? This just doesn't set well with me that it is a community business. I'm not seeing it, and I really have a problem with that. I don't see that it is a community business. It was, it's been referred to as light commercial facilities, outdoor material storage, tool storage, covered storage, auction and flea market. The auction and flea market I could buy is community business. It's also been referred to as truck repair and rental yard. That to me is not a community business. And I guess I'll leave it at that.
And I am in complete agreement, I just, I know the decision that was made that it was allowed, I just don't agree with that decision, I just don't, the commercial use, the definitions, the actual common sense use of the property, just seems like it's just not allowed in a community business.
Not speaking out of turn, Alicia, you were gonna, abstain from comment.
Absolutely.
So Alicia would like to be abstained. Okay. Ross.
What I see on the rendering, you show the fence and stuff, is that solid vinyl?
We just a stockade fence. We didn't spec out a vinyl fence or wood that could be painted.
Let's say stockade.
Excuse me,
What is
sir,
stockade?
wait a minute,
Cedar?
sir, we're not open to the public yet. Did you hold your permit?
No, when you say stockade, what's, to my right, what type of materials is that made of?
It could be wood.
Okay, all right.
The 6-foot stockade is, the purpose really is to have a solid face that you
Oh,
can
yes,
see.
absolutely, that's what I just wanted to discern, what you're getting at with that rendering.
And
Okay.
that's a 6-foot high fence.
Yes.
And how high are your trailers?
Approximately.
9'8".
9'8"?
9'8".
So we may have to address that concern. Don.
So, I'd like to ask Curtis one time, and Bill, how the decision was made that this was allowable use, what's it considered? I tend to more go towards trucking depot and see this similar as if it was a waste management company storing dumpsters at this location and transferring dumpsters to the customer and back. Clean, empty, but similar thing, and I would consider that a trucking depot or something, not a rental yard. And I'm wondering if that's, if the classification, since it's an allowed use, is kind of in a gray area and being considered one thing when it really is something else, just masquerading.
I think Mr. Crowdy made the mention of one of the other things.
Don had a question to ask Kurt. Kurt's on the hot seat right at the moment.
So the decision of allowed uses and not allowed uses rests solely within the zoning enforcement officer. The zoning enforcement officer takes his job very seriously. And when this project was proposed to me, I looked at the zoning use table, which is the governing item. There is a huge disparity in our tables between the stated purpose of community business and what is allowed in that zone. And to take it to an extreme example, in community business, a gravel mining operation is allowed with site plan review. So I have to go by the table. And what that table led me to a pin is that this was a tool rental yard, a truck repair facility, and those kinds of uses which are allowed with site plan review. The question has been brought up a couple of times if this was a truck transfer facility. And my idea of a truck transfer facility is something like a parcel delivery service where big trailers come in and go and transfer material, or a UPS-like facility, that would be a truck transfer facility. A Goya Foods, okay? So it's not that. So having had experience with this issue before, we went down this path with another project in town, and I appealed to people that were had a differing view that they should appeal it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They didn't like the Zoning Board of Appeals decision, and that went to court. And the court has opined, and all my learning has opined, that this is not ripe for appeal until such time as a building permit is issued. So the people that have asked that question have been advised that, and the decision is mine. It's an advisory opinion at this time. All those opinions have to be now disclaimed that it is the applicant's responsibility to ensure that they comply with all the regulations and that they prove at the time of building permit application that they're an allowed use.
Thank you.
Gene, you had a question?
No, I'm just confused on what Kurt just said though. So if somebody doesn't agree with that, this is not the time to question it?
It's not debatable by this board.
I believe, and Kurt will correct me on this too, I believe it's the board's view tonight and following meetings is to see that they have proper lighting, drainage, screening, accessibility, checking with the fire department, checking with the sewer department, and seeing that all those items is what I believe our board is supposed to be looking at tonight. If, and this is where I'm gonna get corrected, if we do approve this plan with a lot of conditions, then, correct me here, it's up to an individuals to file agreements with the Zoning Board of Appeals to continue with what's gotta be done.
Okay, well, the appealable decision is the issuance of the building permit. Correct. So the board, you would issue the site plan decision, which is more or less an administrative decision.
Yeah.
It's not discretionary really, as you pointed out, as long as they satisfy the board's concerns and conditions. The applicant then would apply for building permit, and then that's the point at which someone could appeal the issuance of the building permit to the ZBA.
I know a lot of people here tonight needed to hear what was just said. Cause I think that's a question that's been going around town. How do we stop something like this? Is it the planning board's decision to stop? Maybe I'm speaking too much, but, I've gotta say it. What I'd like to do at this time is open it to the public. Hopefully, some of the comments that come back are something we can use to make this a nicer site. And if you do oppose to it, you have a right to say it tonight, but let's try to keep it quick, and we can go from there. Any other questions from the board at this time?
State their name and address. State their name and address before making a comment.
So, I'm gonna open it to the public. If you'd state your name, address, your concerns, what you agree to and what you disagree to, and what you would like to see us include in the site plan so that it goes to the next step in town. Open to the public, anybody.
Okay.
Right there in the back. State your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Rich Kerr. I'm at 38 Norwood Drive in Charlton. I'm a long-term resident of Charlton, member of the Economic Development Commission, and also the owner of a 2-acre parcel at the other west end of Trolley Crossing Road. Please note that I'm not attempting to speak for the EDC on this subject, but I'm presenting my concerns and opinions as a nearby property owner and a Charlton resident. After seeing their current sites in North Oxford and Leicester, it's my strong opinion that this business should in no way be located in Trolley Crossing, near Trolley Crossing, or on any highly visible road, including Route 20 in Charlton. It's currently located in industrial settings in both North Oxford and Leicester. And if the business comes to Charlton, I definitely believe that it should be located in a similar industrial area. Mr. Meskis's comprehensive zoning opinion letter of February 20th is much appreciated. However, it's becoming increasingly evident that he was not provided accurate or complete information regarding Rain for Rent's company operations or their intended use of the Howlett Lumber site. Howlett Lumber site is zone community business, as stated. Community business definition: to provide sites for businesses that serve the entire town and people and traffic passing through the town. That is critical. Fundamental question regarding Rain for Rent's desire to occupy the Howlett site in Trolley Crossing is whether or not their business is allowable in a community business zone. This question has been raised by many, including just now, and including by planning board members. As we all know, cities and towns establish zones so that their municipalities can be planned properly. With good zoning, like and common theme housing and businesses are grouped together to ensure that residents are properly served and the aesthetics of their cities and towns are maintained and enhanced. The Howlett site being discussed, again, zone community business. All three properties that abut it, including the St. Joseph's Church complex, are zoned village district. Other neighboring properties, in fact, all the surrounding other properties, are zoned residential small enterprise. This includes a hair salon, 2 banks, chiropractor, child daycare center, and soon St. Vincent's 15,000 square feet of medical offices right down the street, okay? Community business, residential small enterprise, and village districts are closely related zones. Their core intent is to house small businesses and residences that serve the town's citizens. That's what it's all about. Mr. Meskis, the Town of Charlton zoning enforcement officer, issued his zoning determination letter on February 20th, stating his opinion is based on the information available and presented to me and is subject to change, modification, or revision at any time in the future. What's transpired since we have found out about Rain for Rent? This is really an industrial level operation. They're not a tool and equipment rental company, AKA Taylor Rental, Home Depot Rental. That is not what this is. And it is not in compliance at all with community business zone intent and definition, which is again to provide services to Charlton residents and those passing through the town. Okay? They have an additional site which was found out since the last meeting, in fact just before the last meeting. It's located on Route 56 in Leicester. On this site are parked dozens of large industrial containers that they intend to bring to the Howlett site. Their Oxford and Leicester operations, both of which they intend to move to the Howlett site, now appear to most closely fit into the Charlton zoning bylaws category of truck terminals, truck freight yards, or freight terminals. This category is not allowed in Charlton's community business zone, but it is allowed in both the industrial, IG, and BEP, business enterprise park zones. Mr. Meskis, as he just mentioned, and Mr. Scanlon mentioned, has stated that to potentially change his zoning opinion, an application will need to be submitted to Charlton Zoning Board of Appeals within 30 days of the issuance of a building permit. We understand that. Our request is that Rainford representatives revisit and revise their plans to occupy the Howlett site and instead meet and work with Charlton town officials to identify other sites in town that would properly accommodate their company operations for the present and the future. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public?
Yes.
State your name and address, please.
Bill Plant, 39 Masonic Combe Road. I own a house near here. Unfortunately, you guys are looking to come into a site that has had quite a history. Back in the 80s, when Mr. Howlett built this property, he came before the town in a very similar fashion with drawings, and I can remember it quite well. I was young, but cobblestone walkways, beautiful shrubbery, fencing, gonna build you a gorgeous place up there on Trolley Crossing Road. What did we have since the early 80s? We had barbed wire fence, we had garbage trucks, trailers. Tin City was one of the names they used. So I don't want to beat that into the ground, but that's what it is, and now we're going from bad to worse with your business. I respect your business and everything else. Zoning belongs in the right areas. We all know that. Unfortunately, the planning board has no power to stop this project. So I'm going to jump right to and ask the planning board that this is going to be appealed. It's going to go to court. So this project is not going to go easily because of it's wrong for the town. But I would ask the planning board to take every step you can to make the site plan, if in the event it ever does go through, that you protect the residents of this area and the people in town. You brought up some great points out here. It's 6-foot fence on Trolley Crossing Road. Their trailers are 9 feet. It's ridiculous. Putnam Road, I heard a few white pines. That's a horrible thing for the homes that are on that road. That should be pure fencing, pure arborvitae lines. I live on the other side. I would ask you folks, do you guys handle any hazardous waste in your business?
We do not.
None at all, because you guys just said you were gonna have 88 trailers. What's allowable on the site? Do we know? Kurt, how many are allowable?
How many tanks, how many?
Yeah. Because again, I'm going back to what you want to walk into. Mr. Howlett's property we heard about what we're going to do. Unfortunately, with zoning, it's not what you promised to do, it's what's allowable. So you can put 200 trailers in there once you get approval and you go in. So I would ask the board, the barriers around this property have to be, if it does end up going, have to be really, really good, and some restrictions put on the number of, we say 88 trailers, and let's put it together. Not 88 and then have 188 because the zoning allows it. Make promises, stand by them, and if the project does go through, make sure that all the people in town are protected. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Yes, the lady in front, state your name and address, please.
Karen Fierro, Shore Road, Charlton, of course. My concern, I have a couple of them, is the traffic coming from the Sonic Home at the bottom of Trolley Crossing.
Thank you. Go ahead.
coming in. I go up there all the time, I do my banking up there. I don't like trailer trucks, I don't like trailer trucks on Route 20. Now I'm gonna have to deal with trailer trucks coming in and trying to make that turn on either way. That's one of my concerns. And I wanna go back to when I first heard about it. Now, these containers, correct me if I'm wrong, are brought to a construction site and are filled with contaminated water? Is that what I understood last time we were here?
They would have the answer for that, not us.
What's in those containers?
What's in those containers?
Basically groundwater. So whenever you go to a construction site and do any digging, the construction company is usually dewatering that area in order to be able to build. And
So
puts
that could be
on
contamination,
It
water?
could be,
It
yes.
could be, okay. Now, I believe you said it's up to them to empty out these containers
Correct.
before they get,
And they're
okay,
cleaned on site before they come back.
okay. I'm a bad construction, I'm not gonna clean it, you just take it away. I went out of business.
I
What
don't-
happens to that,
I can't pick
that
it up.
water now?
Can't pick it up.
So.
Can't bring it back to my net.
So what happens to your container? Does it just sit there at that construction
It
site
would
that
get-
went out of business?
It would get cleaned there and then brought back.
Who would do the cleaning?
Independent environmental company would come and clean it.
Okay, now, they clean it, do they physically clean it down to dry bone?
That's the intent, yes.
That's the intent. But there is possibility that some of that could go back to your place.
Not contaminated, it will be cleaned on site again.
But it does not completely empty out. Am I correct?
The tanks are pitched to one.
Yeah, I see them going down Route 20, they're pitched just like that.
That has nothing to do with it.
But I just don't foresee when you empty something, unless you physically get in there and dry it out, there's gonna be something left inside of that container.
Don't-
Am I wrong?
Don't mean to interrupt you. I think your point has been made.
Oh, thank you.
That really doesn't highlight what we need to look at tonight.
Okay.
If this goes to, maybe I'm speaking wrong again. If this goes before the zoning board of appeals, those are the comments you should be
Made
asking
at the
them.
zoning board. Gotcha.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Name and address again?
Hi, I'm Mike Zaversky, 28 Putnam Road, Charlton, Mass. And when I heard about this, I had questions about it, and also questions that you'd be building it here. First of all, how big are your trucks that carry this?
The regular tractor, trailer trucks.
Regular tractor
Anything that would
truck.
pull like a
How many,
48 foot.
How many go in the truck?
How many?
Tanks. The tanks.
The largest 21,000 gallon and 18,000 gallon tanks?
Yeah.
There was just one, they would just pull one at a time, yes.
And it's a regular tractor trailer.
Correct.
All right. Now, up here on exits, how do you intend to, first of all, bring them in?
Well, we have two access points, one coming in off 20, Putnam Road.
All right,
Or-
that'd be right
or
over
going-
here, right?
Or going down
Right
to
here.
the other intersection, yes.
All right. And you're talking about this entrance that you made here? Which is H. Putnam Road?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, sorry.
Oh, all
Putnam Road's right
right,
here.
all right, okay.
This is Trolley Crossing.
Yeah, okay, all right, so
So
you
we
don't
could
have
either
any
come in
exits
this
there.
way
All right,
and come in here,
all
come
right,
around this way, or come in all the way around
all right.
and then go through here.
And how are you gonna exit?
Either way, depends on which direction we're going.
What do you mean either way?
We would have the option to go either way. We
I
can come
mean,
out of the
no,
facility.
I'm talking, you're coming out here?
No, 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 we would be going towards 20.
So you'll be going onto Masonic Road to get out to
We
Route
could
20.
go out Masonic Road, take
Yeah,
a right,
right.
and go down to the intersection at 20, yes.
I don't know if you ever had trailer trucks going down that way. You know, it's a busy area, and I think it'd be very difficult And also, I'd like to ask, if this is approved, that no trucks come down Putnam Road. Now, we had a thing when we first had Goya come in across the street, and we fought for it. And they could only exit out of that road on Route 20. They could not go down. You know, because this is us.
Yep.
That's the business part of there.
That's a good,
You know.
question to ask. That's something I think the board should look at. If somebody would please make a note of that.
We can do that.
You wanna look into it?
We can put a sign up or,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay. And for the safety of the people. This is a very bad section right here. Your trucks may have trouble getting out, swinging around. You've got cars coming up there, there's no slowing down. They're coming up here at 50 miles an hour. You know, so it's gonna be a tight situation for you there. And to go down there on Massasoit Road may cause some problems. I don't know, how many hours are you gonna keep loading on that? Is that a regular 8-hour day?
Yeah, for the most part, unless there's an emergency.
All right, no double shifts at night or in the morning?
Not unless there's an
8 o'clock in the
emergency,
morning,
correct.
like that.
Right.
But,
Most of our business is done between 7:30 to 4:30.
that's normal hours. How many people do you have?
Right now, we have 21.
21 people?
And we have 2 full-time drivers right
Okay, that's about all I'm gonna.
I just have one comment, that was, I wanna work off of his idea. Coming down to Masonic Hill Road, or Masonic Road, that's a real tight turning radius for somebody to be coming out onto Masonic Hill. I'm not a tractor trailer driver, but I feel you would have to be on the wrong side of Trolley Crossing to be able to make that swing to come in. And if you're parked there trying to make that swing and somebody's coming down Masonic Hill who wants to go into one of the present facilities, is gonna have to sit on Masonic Hill Road to wait for your truck to move out of its way. It's not, it's gonna take up more road space than, it's gonna be on the wrong side of the road to exit. And I'll let that be.
Can I ask a question? Recognizing that I've recused myself from any decision. Right now, Trolley Crossing is very gravelly road. They redid it so that when you drive a regular vehicle, you hear pip, 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 because it's all, it's not a flat. Exact, thank you. Has any thought been given to the impact that these heavy tractor trailers are going to have to that road? And has, simply because the cars are destroying it, I can only imagine what the tractor trailers are going to do to it.
Wait. Sorry.
So I would suggest to the board that that is an accepted public way. And it's maintained by the town of Charlton as an accepted public way. And it was designed as a way. And it's gonna be impacted like any other way.
Okay. All right, we have a gentleman in the back, state your name and address, please.
Dan Proudy, 134 Partridge Hill Road. I just want to address some facts that aren't facts. This is not a freight yard. I developed Goya Foods, I developed A. Dewey Pile twice. That is freight. Trucks coming in with long haul trucks full with rice in the case of Goya, canned goods, broken down and going out in 24 different trucks. Freight, in the case of Dewey Pile, is a cross dock with 80 doors.
Okay, I
And
don't
then
mean
when
to
they,
interrupt you for a minute, but, I think that's going off the subject.
No, no, because
wait-
people-
wait a minute,
excuse me.
Wait a minute. We're discussing a site plan.
I
for
know,
what's here.
but there's some misstatements saying that's a freight yard. It's not a freight yard. Now, the other thing that's dissolved by zoning, which is Plan B, we had a New England-wide oil company. And they contacted us because, you know what, you allow oil companies in town, okay? And we said, no, you know, we have a project for this, okay? So everybody keeps talking about freight. Well, every day, trucks pull up and they unload stone, okay? That's freight, and it goes across the street, all right? When the lumberyard was there used to be freight coming in all the time, shingles, lumber, cabinets, okay? That's, you know, so freight was coming, that's part of the business. Now, this is not freight, these are proprietary items they own. And you know, when these tanks go out, sometimes they're out for 6 months or a year. So, I mean, if all their tanks came back, sure, they'd have 88 tanks. Or maybe in the wintertime they come back. But, you know, I mean, all this is getting misconstrued. And, you know, I'm not gonna say anybody's a liar, I'm just gonna say they're very, very careless with the truth, okay? So I just wanted to right that wrong for the record. Thank you.
All right. Again, as the planning board, we're here to discuss lighting, paving, fire, water usage. We're not here tonight to discuss if this is a freight yard or a shipping yard. That is for a discussion. If somebody wishes to bring this somewhere else after our board approves it or disapproves it. So what I'd like to do is, it's getting late. As a board member, we've accommodated this town quite a lot. We've got meetings every week this month to try to help out this community. And I think if somebody from the board doesn't have a question about lighting, landscaping, fencing, I'm gonna have to continue this public hearing. If we're gonna talk about freight yards, trucks can't make the turns, that's not for us to discuss, and I hope I'm speaking correctly. So, the applicant would like to say one more thing before we.
I understand the sentiment, and I know it's late, and I don't wanna be here much longer myself. But I'm not clear on what issues the applicant has not addressed that would be addressed at a subsequent meeting.
Did you have points that weren't addressed? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need one, I think before we adjourn this meeting, we're gonna let Mike and Bill make a couple comments as to what we think wasn't addressed yet. Mike did go over some of it earlier. We did get a comment from the public about pine trees. Felt it wasn't correct. So I think we need to address that part of Putnam Road for better screening visibility. And I think
Height of the fence.
Height of the fence.
and the height of the fence needs to be addressed.
The dirt area.
And some of the board members had a concern about the brown colored area, which would be a dirt, maybe dirt, gravel area. I think part of Mike's report is gonna tell us that if that is a gravel area and we have a heavy rain in the spring, that the trailers may have trouble getting in and out. So those issues, I think, need to be addressed for our next meeting. These type of things. So what I'd like to do is take a couple moments here, try to highlight some of the things we'd like to have you look at, and we'll extend this public hearing for another night. And while they're giving their comments, I'm gonna ask Jane to tell me when we think we can put them back on the agenda. Mike, if you.
Right, so I think my letter's pretty clear on what I think the board and myself will look for more information on. I'd just like to add on to the comment you just made about the gravel area in the back. I don't know what material that is, how much there is of it. I can't have an opinion either way, so maybe they could do some testing to see how much gravel is there, what it really is. I mean, looking at these trucks now, these tanks, each one weighs about 9.5 tons empty. So, that's a significant amount of weight on that. And if it's muddy, if it turns muddy, then you might have some difficulty back there.
Bedtime.
That's what it is.
Where are you, Peter?
That's what it is. Where are you?
You said you'd be
You
home.
said 9:30. Turn on
You don't get
TV.
paid enough for this, you know.
Okay, so I think between, looking at the fence height.
I think that's a big thing.
Fence
It's
height.
especially from H. Putnam Road too,
Yeah.
just because the roads are tired.
More screening, more ideas on Putnam Road.
I have a little bit of an issue with not having lines because I think all of us have gone up to the other site and kind of see everything everywhere, and lines will kind of keep it organized and in place. And also limit the amount. I mean, they're saying 80, but what if it gets up to 100?
I think
It kind of
we need to put a limit on that too. I think if it's 80, it's 80.
And I think that we can bring up at another meeting, what we would allow. I just want them to be able to leave here tonight knowing they're gonna address the fence, the sewer department. We would like feedback from the sewer department. We'd like some feedback from the fire department.
Feedback, what do you mean feedback?
Is the sewer department gonna allow this to be continued into their septic systems?
We're already in the system.
Correct, but it's a change of use. I think it's a change of use for the sewer department.
Okay, we're not gonna have any further impact to the sewer. We
Okay.
have a closed, contained system for filtering the water that's gonna be in the building.
But you are gonna build 4 bays for truck repairs, which will have.
Can I clarify that they are not for truck repairs?
Okay.
Okay?
But-
They're for maintaining our pumps and our equipment inside.
But that will have some type of a trough drain or drain in there.
It will, and that's all gonna be contained within the building and go through its own closed loop filtration system.
Okay.
So it
but-
won't have an impact.
But
So we can,
I'd like something from the sewer department saying that
they're happy.
they're happy with what's gonna be coming down the pipe.
I guess I would just ask protocol. That's not generally something that we go ask for. I mean, the fire department generally submits a comment letter, the fire chief submits a comment letter, if they have one. So we've now been to 2 public hearings, continued a bunch of time for snow, nobody's problem, but Mother Nature. If they haven't commented by now, aren't we safe to assume that they don't have a comment?
I think what we'll do is we'll ask Bill during the week just to see if there was any.
And that's fine, yeah.
We'll ask Bill to do that.
In a similar vein, we heard some comments tonight about truck turning radii onto Masonic. It might be nice to have the police chief comment on, the traffic flow.
How does it differ, my truck's going down and using that road versus the lumber yard or Kamasi or any other truck at this point? It's a public way.
Yeah.
How does
And
it
that was
impact?
pointed out to us tonight by Kurt, so maybe Bill's last comment, we can work on that.
My concern is this, okay, we came here, you addressed concerns, you said you wanted us to improve the facade.
Yeah.
We worked within the 6-foot height limit.
Yeah.
We actually tried to improve on that a little bit by changing the grade and giving it a little bit further height. The bylaws state that a 6-foot fence is the maximum. What do you propose? Where do we go?
Okay.
And included on, just keep in mind, we're providing growth vegetation that doesn't exist on the road in its entirety.
Yep.
So if you go to Kamasi, you have a honeysuckle type shrub or lilac type shrub that barely screens what's there. And then we're proposing deciduous trees that with time you're gonna end up with a canopy that'll continue to improve that. So again, we stepped up trying to address the concerns of screening, not obscuring, but screening the operation, particularly in the areas where we feel that you'll be able to see the operation more readily than what's behind the building.
Okay.
And just to add on that, we were told, okay, address this issue in the front, and now we need to work on Putnam Road. We had proactively tried to put some pines in there to fill in where there were some spaces to address that. There is screening there now. There is existing vegetation there. My concern is, I come back the next time, then what?
I do know from periodic public hearings, things do come up that we, like tonight, we asked a solar farm to, on their chain link fence, to put slats in it, to to give the neighbors no sight to the solar farm. And after looking at your plan tonight, my opinion is, Putnam Road needs a little more vegetation protection from the neighborhood. These are just working deals, that type of thing. And as far as the 6-foot fence, you're saying that there's a possibility that zoning only allows 6 feet. I'll have Bill and Mike look into it, and if we can't request a higher fence because of zoning reasons, then we won't ask for it. But that gives us a time to review this. It was a concern of the public, the height of the fence, so we need to research it between now and our next hearing.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Thanks.
Jane, you got a date?
Yeah, May,
18th.
May
April 18th.
April 18th.
April 18th. We have a motion to continue the public hearing to April 18th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
I get Friday off.
No problem. Sitting on the side of the road. And I don't text. I don't work. Comments are accepted. Please don't feel sorry.
We go with the slip with you.
You have a right.
What's that? I said, you told me that going this thing was rare in the first meeting.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's happened at every meeting so far, so I'm not sure if I should.
It is, I know.
That's right. We're agreed on by second.
What are we looking at?
Yep.
10 more minutes, 15 minutes, Bill?
Yeah.
We're almost done, so we'll just pass this.
Do we plan on discussing any zoning, or is it zoning amendment?
Yeah.
It's on the agenda.
Nothing,
Okay.
additional public hearing.
That's it.
Okay, great. No public hearing.
Well said. Yeah, good. Good night, folks.
Sorry, Aaron.
I would
Can you share with them the letter I wrote?
Okay, let's.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Put the time and I'll. It's
Yeah,
nothing's
right,
concrete.
yeah.
Nothing's concrete. I don't even have to have that set.
Yeah,
We don't have a
meetings
meeting
are,
next
these
week.
meetings are killing me.
We should probably make one to decrease everything.
It's the chairman's fault. You should move it along
Yeah.
faster.
You should just give people, at the time slot, you should have actually a timer that says, and we're done. Continue.
Get your big button.
Then they complain about it.
Well, you could also push the time out instead of, 10 and 20 minutes.
Right.
Say we have 30 minutes to address this.
But then people wouldn't be seen for months then. That's the problem.
Okay, so, move along. What do you got, Bill, real quick?
Zoning bylaw amendments, so we have, the next meeting.
Does Mike need to still be here?
No.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Unless you wanna stay.
I like you all, but
Yep, I don't
I'd like to
blame
see
you.
my
like
kids
you too,
tonight.
So on April 18th, we have the public hearing for the zoning change from agricultural to community business for Sunset City.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
The meeting will be in the senior center. That hearing will start at 8 o'clock.
Maybe. Well, you're not
Well,
gonna do
it
that
will.
then
We
8:20.
put 8.
We put 8 o'clock, right, that's the
They
advertised.
asked, I forgot there was.
That's the advertised hearing time.
Can I ask a favor
Okay,
on
well,
that?
We decided to put the other applications in before that, so we
Thank
can get them
goodness.
through the door.
Right. That's what I was gonna ask, is because the last time we had Sunset City, and then they put people after that, and we saw them at 11:26 PM. So if we can put everybody else
That's
before
right,
sunset,
that's what I
yeah.
figured, get that done first. And then we have, on the 25th, we have 2 solar moratorium zoning hearings, one by citizens petition and one by the selectmen. Those are,
Yes.
Yeah, are they
They voted
the same?
they are
In case one
basically the
doesn't go
same.
through.
Okay.
They both would impose a moratorium on building permits for a 1-year period.
Yeah,
And
even
then-
much easier. Good.
And then we would have the recreational marijuana public hearing. We could do it that night if you like, on the 25th, or we could go to the next meeting, which would be May 2nd.
Will that all make the town?
I was just gonna ask that, will it be able to
comply
get
with the
on the
dates?
town meeting, because I know that was very important, that's why we went.
Yes, you could still do it. You'd have to have a recommendation on marijuana
Okay.
in order for town meeting to vote on it.
They're having a meeting tomorrow.
The board,
Marijuana, aren't they?
All
Yeah,
right,
they're
so
coming back in
tomorrow night,
at 5:30.
there is a community meeting
Correct.
That's what I thought, a
In the
public
selectmen's
right.
office.
Yes.
Or in the selectmen's meeting room,
for,
5:30.
right, for
Recreational.
health-wise, to be able to apply for their recreational license.
Correct.
Which I just wanna say ironically, Sheriff Lou Evangelidis will be downstairs with the Charlton Leos talking anti-drugs.
We could have done that if we tried. At the same time?
At the same time, because I've been invited to both meetings.
So if you wanted to be absolutely safe, we could do the recreational marijuana the same night as the solar. That'd be 3 zoning
Yeah.
amendment hearings. Do them all at once.
Is there anything else on the agenda that night?
We continued some public
We got
hearings.
Oh, Forest Service Road.
Right, we have Forest River Road on. That's
What's that?
continued.
Well, they're in a holding, I would suggest that they're in a holding pattern.
Yeah, they can just come off the agenda until
That's
they.
Otis, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a silly question? Since the selectmen have already decided to make the solar moratorium a point, and I forget the name of it now, but
Article on the
an
warrant.
article on the warrant, what do we need to discuss since it's already going before the town anyway?
Do you want me to do the
Sure.
procedural thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so the citizens petition has specific language in it, and because it is a citizens petition, it goes forward as written.
Oh,
Okay, you
You
cannot
can't
change
touch
it,
it.
you can't do anything, you hold the required public hearing, people say, yes,
Oh,
we should have,
okay.
okay. And it would be good for you to watch the hour-long discussion at the selectmen's meeting at Tuesday night, because the proponents of the petition came forward and asked the selectmen to sponsor an article.
yes, I was there.
Okay, because they thought it was better. The direction that Bill and I have been working with, and town council and through Robin, is that the citizens petition did not put any mechanism in for studies.
Okay,
Okay, it just said, have a moratorium, stop issuing building permits, and we need to think about this.
okay,
The selectmen's proposed issue or article is going to put in that the selectmen appoint a ad hoc committee
okay, that makes more sense.
to study the
Exactly.
situation and make recommendations to.
So we're not just not doing solar, but we're learning something while we're not doing solar.
Something you don't have
Makes
to do
sense,
it.
right.
Well, that was a question, and Kurt and I recommended that it be assigned to the selectmen, because it would have
Yes.
to come back to you for the public hearing. So we thought it'd be better if you had an independent group.
I think that's much
research
better.
the issue and come back. The selectmen article appears before the citizens petition article on the warrant.
Okay, so if the selectmen's article passes, does that negate
I
the?
think so. I think
They
it
would-
was over.
they would vote
For all, yeah, for
right?
all
What
intents
would
and
have
purposes.
happened is that probably
They should withdraw.
the petitioner would have to get up and motion to table.
Okay, okay.
What, yeah.
There's the plan. Good time.
So that's it for the zoning. So you have 4 zoning articles on the warrant for town meeting.
And we, and as a planning board, would we vote to approve it or recommend it?
The goal is to make a
Recommend,
recommendation, study the question and make a recommendation.
Will it be the moderator
I
who
have the
explains to the
warrant.
public at the town meeting that they're not voting in or out cannabis, they're simply voting how to zone it? Because I think it is so important, because people are going to come thinking if they vote no, they're voting no cannabis. but instead they're voting no zoning for cannabis.
Correct, right.
Didn't we discuss having Jonathan come and explain?
I thought we did, and I just wanted to make sure that was still happening.
I think so.
I think that would be a good idea,
Yes.
because I can explain it, but I try not to,
Right.
I try to only answer factual questions on the floor, because it.
It can go crazy.
Right.
I think having legal counsel there would be
Right,
very
and,
good.
and Jim Cosgrove has said, this is not an
Right.
area that I'm
Sure,
comfortable in.
I don't blame him.
You know, and so.
I don't wanna get up and explain it.
What was the decision for zoning? I
Jonathan
wasn't there.
Silverstein is, KP,
Because
KP Law.
Jonathan is the other guy.
Excuse me?
There's also a Jonathan from, Healthwise, isn't there?
No, his name is James McMahon.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Right, no.
James, John, okay.
They begin to fix
So the attorney who is here tonight waiting mistakenly to make a comment about the moratorium has submitted a letter in opposition to the moratorium, so we'll provide that to you.
Okay.
So you'll have that information as well. So that's it for the zoning amendments. This is a copy of Kurt's memo on solar and the benefits and/or issues that it has on the town.
Now because this shows stuff, like, does this have like a money impact?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, there's a budget in here.
So.
Huge.
So it's good information.
Will
It's on the
public
town
get to see
website now
this
as
at
well.
all?
It's posted on the town website. It was presented in condensed form to the Board of Selectmen. And I've had some comments from various citizens, okay, I'm doing this, they said, good job. And I just tried to provide neutral, factual information.
Yep, that's
That,
all there is to
you
it.
know, I was asked by a landowner yesterday who has a solar project, and they said, what is your view on solar? I said, it's neutral. I'm enforcing a bylaw that exists.
I say the same thing, because we ask all the time, if they follow all the rules and it's allowed, then. My husband says that he really likes the look of them, they look very modern. Remember, he was born and raised in Poland, so he's a
So it's
weirdo.
27.
So
the two
and he
biggest
would love
ones
to have
in the
one
entire
of those
meeting.
ones.
Always.
And lastly, this was in the
I
Beacon.
wanted to do, I hate that.
I thought you'd enjoy it.
The other thing is we have a letter from Kurt.
No, from the chief.
From the chief, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Designating Kurt, who is, you an assistant fire chief or deputy?
Assistant fire chief.
Assistant fire chief, to represent the chief on matters before the planning board. So that any official comments from the fire department can come through Kurt.
So when I asked you if the turning radius and all that stuff for these sites are adequate to come in from you?
I've been doing this,
Right.
under that guise for quite a while, and we look at the storage facilities and stuff, and reasonableness, because we have a big tower that we're not gonna run into a storage facility. Give me 40 acres and I'll turn that thing around. We base it on engine 3, which is our largest engine, and work with Mike, you know, to make sure that the representations are correct.
So I'm gonna pass this around real quick, and it just basically
It's an
the
official.
fire chief has asked that Kurt.
No, but if anything that comes in where, like tonight,
We
we
already
were
asked.
discussing,
Right.
if the fire department had any comment on it.
And specifically to Rain for Rent, I commented on behalf of the fire department that that building needed to have a fire sprinkler system, that it wasn't, the piping that was shown was not adequate. You know, it was only conceptual and needed to be refined.
And then Gene has been getting phone calls in the past week or so from other potential projects. So the development wave is not gonna slow down anytime soon. We've got half a dozen that are waiting in the wings to come forward, so just so you know.
My husband asked me that same thing.
One solar.
Is he doing, you got any
Solar?
alternate? You step in when one of us quits. So,
And you make sure you attend all the meetings, so if you don't, you become chairman.
Yeah, is that what happens?
So, be careful what you wish for.
Steps back.
Be careful what you wish
That's
for.
why I'm here, that's why I'm here, I'm here to help.
We talked about that already, yeah. I'm gonna
I
try
say
to
too
go.
much, tell me to be
I don't-
quiet.
I'll let you know.
No, no,
I'll let you
please,
know, yeah.
say everything. It takes me off the hook.
Questions are good.
I wanted the question
Oh, I'm
to
sorry,
to
thank you.
Kurt
I'm
to get
like,
on the
I
record
wasn't
for
sure.
everybody to hear, because I know once it's, we
Correct.
weren't looking at that, we were looking at that, so. Thank you for clarifying that for
Well,
everybody.
and I've written it, you know, and it's, I'm just regurgitating what's written.
I think I stumped a bunch of questions.
Yeah, that's why I asked, you gotta hear from Kurt, and then we'll ask the audience. What was the last comment? What'd you want?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I'm good.
Motion to adjourn.
Good night,
So
folks.
moved.
Thanks, Kurt.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.